Hello, and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
And I am Dustin Jackson.
And hey, witches. Hey, moles. Hey, ice cubes. Hey, goldfish. Look alive. Banjo-Kazooie is 25.
Woo!
I know the ice cubes, most known for dying, are from Banjo-Tooie, but, you know, I felt like I had to include them. When you're including Banjo characters known for death or near death, you gotta include the ice cubes.
Hyle, which one would you say I am of that bunch?
What, of the ice cubes or just of the characters who die?
Witches, moles, ice cubes, goldfish.
I would say you're a mole, Dustin.
Hyle, I was about to say the exact same thing about you.
Oh no, and I've aspired so much to be a goldfish. Where did I go wrong in life?
Hey, there's plenty of life left.
Yeah, we'll see how many house explosions or barbecuings I can withstand. This is our episode, of course, commemorating 25 years of Banjo-Kazooie, which is one of the most foundational titles that DK Vine covers. So it's obviously a big deal, but we're going to be a little bit laid back with this episode, Dustin. Like, I don't have a grand thesis that I'm trying to arrive at to summarize 25 years of Banjo-Kazooie. Because the truth is, we have discussed Banjo-Kazooie a great deal. Not just here on the Kongversation, but also just throughout the years on DK Vine.
Yeah, I love Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah.
Episode over.
Yeah, I mean, it's not to the point where we've run out of things to talk about, because that's not true. But, you know, 25 years, every big anniversary, increment by 5, you feel like you have to acknowledge it. And sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. But 25 is a quarter century. It's a big deal. And I was thinking, you know, we've done the spotlight, we've done the Why Banjo-Kazooie Still Matters episode. What can we really do and say for the 25th anniversary? And I just thought we would just kick back on this one and really just talk about some errant things about Banjo-Kazooie that we love. It's not really going to be a barn burner of an episode. It's going to be just Banjo-Kazooie fans chatting about Banjo-Kazooie, and I hope that's enough for you. But at this point, like, we've just come off of, like, last year, the original N64 version being added to NSO plus expansion pack, and that's the most recent, like, big thing that's happened as far as Banjo-Kazooie goes. And we talked about that then. So this episode is just going to be a lot of meandering thoughts on Banjo-Kazooie. And just, you know, taking stock of it being a quarter century, of course, but we're not going to arrive at any grand eureka moment here. It's just going to be for funsies.
Yeah, we had our eureka moment. We know we like it. We know we love Banjo-Kazooie.
And I do want to apologize ahead of time. If you listened to the last Kongversation mini episode, Donkey Kong's Roman Holiday, I am still on the mend. I'm still recovering from a surprise summer ailment. I got a really, really bad cold, like one of those colds that is very similar to COVID, but it wasn't quite COVID, but I had the full on, like, chills, body aches, horrendous sore throat, and then just extremely terrible cough. And
I had that too. It was off. It was like 3 weeks I had that, and I was so embarrassed.
Yeah. Oh, silly me. I got myself sick.
I got the coughs again.
You know, I hate when people shame you for getting sick. Like, you should take better care of yourself. And like, what does that mean? What does that mean? Like, I'm not consuming enough vitamins? Like, I don't know. But, yeah, I was rougher on that Donkey Kong's Roman Holiday episode. I'm a little bit better today. I'm still a little congested, still a little coffee, so I do apologize if I'm not sounding at my peak, baritones, but I am getting there, and the conversation waits for no clean bill of health. So we will persist. We will carry on. And really quick, I would like to plug a few things before we get into it, because hey, I got bills to pay, and I pay them with the Patreon. DK Vine is on Patreon, dkvine.com/Patreon, or patreon.com/DKVine. It is our primary source of funding here at DK Vine. This is independent Donkey Kong journalism in its truest form. Nintendo is not paying us. Rare is not paying us. Playtonic is not paying us. We scrounge and we scrape and we get by, thanks to the patrons first and foremost. So if you haven't done so, if you enjoy the content, if you just like having reliable nonsense, like idiots like us talking about this, then think about, throwing a few bucks a month our way, and it'll help us continue to grow our operations, expand, like Dong. And, who knows how far we can take this silly little dream that is DK Vine. dkvine.com/Patreon. And hey, we are on TeePublic. And by the time this episode goes live, we will have 2 new shirts available for July at our merchandise store at dkvine.com/merchandise, or just pull us up on TeePublic. Dustin, what can I say? Our shirts are my favorite shirts. I wear them. I'm not just the president. I'm also a client. I put those on, and I feel so comfy. I feel so snug. I feel like a little bug in a little rug. And I wiggle around in them. I'm like, look at me, and look at me, and look at me. And it's great. It's great fun. I love having this nonsense vomited all over my chest. And if you want to have that feeling of comfort and just sticking your thumb in the nose of what is considered normal, then check out our merchandise store. If you're a fan of Banjo, well, we've got the Son of Log shirt, which of course is styled in the form of religious iconography that you often see, except turned on its head, because we're celebrating Royston, the goldfish from off of the Banjo-Kazooie series.
Yeah, we're a little wacky like that here.
We have the Don't Stop Till You Swap Enough shirt, which of course is a checklist of the stop and swap items from Banjo-Kazooie. And who knows?
That's good. I feel like you'll never find a better shirt than you'll find here in the DK Vine store. And I've tried. I've looked everywhere for shirts better than this, praying that there were shirts better, and there just aren't.
Yeah, you went to Target. You went to Kmart.
Kmart.
You went to Rose's, and then you just gave up.
Yeah, I said, well, that's probably enough.
So we'll probably have more Banjo-Kazooie inspired shirts in the future. And it's not official, so we can't have the full-on greatness that, say, Fangamer offers you, but I don't see Fangamer offering a Royston Jesus fish, so.
Yeah, they gotta get on that.
No, we didn't. No,
that's
stay
true.
away, Fangamer.
Let us do this. You can have all the other ones.
Anyway, yeah. And also, before we get into it, Twitter is falling apart yet again. Hilariously, it's just collapsing in on itself as of the day we're recording this. I guess, Elon hasn't paid his bills again. I don't know. He should have a Patreon, but it just really does remind you the importance of maybe not relying on these, fulcrum points that are owned by corporations and billionaires. Maybe, if you want to interact with people, fans, you have to go to some older school methods of interaction, like, I don't know, internet forums. The DK Vine forum is back. It's better than ever. It's the new Play Control DK Vine forum. You can check it out at dkvine.com/forum. It's been up and running now for the better part of a month. And, it's fun. It's, forums aren't as active, the hotbed, as they used to be back in the heydays of internet forums, but as this weekend shows us, maybe they should be. So if you want to read more than 600 things a day before you're cut off, then check out the DK Vine forum at dkvine.com/forum. And we're also on Blue Sky Social. If you're on Blue Sky Social yet, if you got the invite, we are set up. We've set up shop there. We're on Mastodon, and we're on Hive. And I've been basically just replicating our Twitter content on the three of those. And should Twitter finally fall into the black hole of irrelevancy, then maybe one of those will become the primary outlet for DK Vine. But just follow us there.
I'm hoping it's Hive. Wouldn't Hive just feel so perfect for DK Vine?
Hive is actually kind of my least favorite of the three because there's no desktop version. It's all just in an app, and it's really irritating.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm not on there. But just on the name alone, wouldn't it just be so perfect if it got good?
I don't know. Like Mastodon's kind of like the snow horns from off of Star Fox Adventures.
That's true. And Blue Sky is kind of like the sky in some of the DKU games we talk about sometimes.
I was going to say it's like Mario from off of the Mario Brothers movie because he's Mr. Blue Sky, remember?
Oh, yeah. That's more topical.
Yeah, it's more topical than, the sky above us at all times. Anyway, you have options, people. You don't have to follow us on Twitter. So seek us out elsewhere. We will persist. You just have to, follow us there. Anyway, Dustin, Banjo-Kazooie, 25 years old. Quarter century. That's old.
That's a long time. If you think about it, that's like 25 years.
Yeah, when, you know what was 25 years old when Banjo-Kazooie came out? Watergate!
Whoa, no way.
Yeah, that's how old Banjo-Kazooie is. It's Watergate old when Banjo-Kazooie was new.
Holy crap, that's like 25 years ago.
Yeah. What is it? Watergate was 50 years ago? Shit.
Now you're telling me Banjo-Kazooie's like half that? Get out of town.
Yeah, of course, as it is with every significant by 5 anniversary of any series or major game in said series, it brings with it a certain amount of reflection and, of course, angst. Because I would argue that the 25th anniversary of Banjo-Kazooie does feel a tad bit rougher for Banjo-Kazooie fans than the 20th felt. If just for the historical perspective of where the last 5 years took us versus 2018.
I think that's fair to say. In 2018, we hadn't even gotten Banjo-Kazooie and Smash yet at that point. But still, we had just had Rare Replay not too long before that.
Yeah, so just to recap, to refresh everybody where we were 5 years ago for the 20th anniversary. In 2018, it was only 3 years off of Rare Replay and the early days of what we define as the Rare Renaissance, where Rare kind of had this resurgence as a studio. Not only Rare, but all of the properties that they were known for had this resurgence in popularity. Because it was only a year away from Ukulele's release. And, even if Ukulele failed to meet expectations for many people, I think it still scratched that itch for a lot of Banjo-Kazooie fans, you know? It might not have, like, met that criteria everybody was looking for in their head, but it was still a satisfying 3D platformer in that same spirit and vibe by a lot of the key creative talent behind the original Banjo-Kazooie games. And Sea of Thieves had just launched a few months prior, and, you know, even if you weren't on board with Sea of Thieves, I would say that those early days of Sea of Thieves still felt more connected to the history of Rare and its shared universe than it arguably has gotten today. I feel like Sea of Thieves has kind of drifted with its own mythology that it's built up, and of course the crossovers it's kind of garnered over the past couple years. They don't really go out of their way too often these days to talk about Captain Black Eye, for example. So back then it still felt like Sea of Thieves. Well, you know, even if I don't like this game, it's still going to have references. It's still going to maybe bring in aspects of Banjo-Kazooie. So that's exciting.
Yeah, like, since it was all brand new, you would have stuff like the paintings on the various islands of Banjo and Kazooie and piñatas and stuff like that. So it still felt like, oh, these are like brand new references to this stuff. There's the tavern where they refer to Jolly Roger's Lagoon, talking about Captain Black Eye here and there. So yeah, it felt like that was a little more at the front of your mind with it than it is today, where you know, all that stuff is already in there. We've seen it. What are they going to do? Add like another painting of a squirrel or something?
I mean, they could.
Yeah, they could. I'd be happy with it.
You know, I'm still waiting for them to put TT in the game. And, you know, the newfound rush of Banjo-Kazooie merchandise at the time. Cause I think right around the 20th anniversary is when they announced that first four figure statue. And they really did start opening the floodgates to all this official Banjo-Kazooie merchandise that we had never seen before. It was thrilling due to really the lack of anything for the past 20 years before that.
Yeah.
Like when Banjo-Kazooie came out, we had like a Banjo-Kazooie plush. We had that Mumbo Jumbo plush that you got for reserving the game at Toys R Us. But you really didn't have anything after that. Like it never really got the merchandise, even the paltry merchandise that Donkey Kong would get.
Yeah, the only other Banjo-Kazooie quote merchandise that I can think of is Fruit by the Foot would have Banjo-Kazooie tips on its wrappers at a point. Wow,
what a golden age for Banjo-Kazooie fandom. We had the discarded paper from Fruit by the Foot.
Exactly.
But yeah, that was all new and fresh. And, you know, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which was fully unveiled at E3 2018, it gave fans the hope that Banjo and Kazooie would appear in it. However small many felt that hope would be. You know, for once, the faith actually was rewarded, and we did ultimately get Banjo and Kazooie in that game. But my point was, there was a lot of aspiration for the future of Banjo-Kazooie at its 20th anniversary. Like, even if everybody knew Rare wasn't doing a new Banjo-Kazooie game at that time, it still felt like there was good things ahead.
Yeah.
But here we are 5 years later. Rare Replay is now as old as Banjo-Tooie was when Nuts and Bolts launched.
Jeez.
Yeah, I'm really putting into the perspective all these historical comparisons. So
hate that.
Yeah, Watergate and Banjo-Tooie. Playtonic as a studio proved itself beyond all measurable doubt with Yooka-Laylee and Impossible Lair. But we are still in this vast desert of news concerning what their next game is. Even if we all know they're working on Yooka-Laylee, we just have nothing to go off of how far along is it? What will it be about? What will it, entail? Show us anything, Playtonic. But we've got nothing. Like I said, Sea of Thieves has become Rare's biggest IP ever. but one that now tends to downplay the connections it has to the broader shared universe, Banjo-Kazooie included. There is just an abundance, a sick amount of Banjo-Kazooie merchandise. But, I can read the temperature in the room. I know that a good deal of fans are beginning to resent it. Which seems crazy, like how starved we were for merchandise for 20 years, but now people are viewing it as an affront, and like, how dare you try to sell me this button up? How dare you try to sell me this 9th Banjo-Kazooie statue when we have no games to speak of? And I'll touch upon this later in the episode. It'll come up again. It's
this toilet seat cover. You think this is a good replacement?
Yeah, I want Lago himself.
In my house.
And Super Smash Bros. Ultimate's Fighters Pass. that and Banjo-Kazooie on NSO Plus Expansion Pack were the last victories the fandom truly felt, as in, oh wow, this feels like progress. This feels like forward momentum. This feels like we are being heard as Banjo-Kazooie fans. And I get that. Like, as I displayed just recently on this very podcast, when we did our Not E3 Xbox episode a few weeks back, even the most optimistic, glass half full among us who champion modern day Rare can start to grow weary over time. It's hard. It is hard, especially when you love Banjo-Kazooie so much and you see all of these other contemporary 3D platformers from around the same time, arguably, and I'm not getting into this debate, but arguably lesser renowned 3D platformers getting like multiple new sequels, all of this attention, all this love, and we're just left here twisting in the wind, and it almost feels like there is resentment for Banjo-Kazooie, and like, oh, you like Banjo-Kazooie, that's a bad thing. And even if that's not true, you still kind of get that vibe, and you feel like you're walking on eggshells, shouted out by Kazooie or not, every time you want to celebrate that you are a Banjo-Kazooie fan.
Definitely. I feel like I've been really feeling like all of that, right down to I love Rare, but I'm getting a little sick of just sitting here waiting for something to happen with this from anyone. And yeah, I really get that feeling of just being on the outside looking in, saying, surely our time will come soon. I mean, all these other series are getting new games. Obviously, Banjo has got to get something sooner or later.
And yeah,
but it's hard to keep that. It's hard to keep that optimism.
And I'm not one of those. Ironically, I'm not one of those people who are monkey see, monkey do. As much as I love monkeys, because when everybody was like, oh, Crash has gotten a remaster or whatever. Let's get Banjo-Kazooie the same. Like, I'm like, we don't need to do exactly that because that's the trend. Like, we do something else, just bring us back Banjo-Kazooie. But yeah, I mean, it does kind of gnaw on you, like the beaver in Click Clock Wood, just a little bit. Like, just, and like, I love Sea of Thieves. Like, this isn't even me, like, saying, like, how dare Rare not make a new Banjo-Kazooie game. I just want something to be done with it. And, my feelings towards the future of Banjo-Kazooie and how that relates to Rare and Xbox Studios, that certainly fluctuated over the lifespan of the Kongversation, if you go back and follow along, because like after seeing that very early, like the embers of the 3D platforming renaissance, after that fell out of fashion, and then in the early 2010s, in the early days of this podcast, when you started seeing like all of these like indie studios starting to like try to revive 3D platformers, and it, getting things rolling again. And, going into E3 2015, I was actually hopeful that maybe Rare was going to show off a new Banjo-Kazooie game. But then I fell in love with Sea of Thieves and I stopped worrying about it for a bit. Especially with ukulele carrying that torch. I was like, well, it doesn't really matter right now because we've got the best of both worlds. But I think enough time has passed now where, yeah, I want something to be done with Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah.
It's just anything.
I said it before. I'd said it before on one of our Xbox E3 episodes. Love Sea of Thieves. Getting a little sick of Sea of Thieves. Even with this Monkey Island expansion, which I'm going absolutely nuts over. Even then, I'm like, well, it's still Sea of Thieves. It's still the same thing I've been getting from Rare for like multiple years now.
And don't get me wrong, I'm completely satisfied if Rare is nothing more than the Sea of Thieves studio from now on. Doesn't mean I don't want somebody else to do a Banjo-Kazooie game. Like, this isn't me saying I want Rare to spend the capital and the staff power to make a new Banjo-Kazooie game. I just want somebody affiliated with Xbox Studios to be like, yeah, we got this, and we'll get into what that might entail in a little bit. But this isn't like sour grapes towards Rare as it stands, because I'm a big fan of Sea of Thieves. I'm a big fan of the people at Rare.
Yeah, and Rare doesn't need to want to do a new Banjo-Kazooie. Like, if no one there wants to make a new Banjo-Kazooie, that's totally fine. I don't want them to make it if they don't want to, but there's gotta be someone out there who does.
Yeah, and we'll touch upon that for sure. But yeah, that's kind of where I am. I'm walking into the 25th anniversary, definitely feeling like a little bit more downcast about where we are the last 5 years. And granted, in the last 5 years, we did have a huge pandemic that really threw a wrench into all the plans. And there are rumors that maybe something for Banjo-Kazooie is in the works. That's about a year-old rumor, so that's still relatively fresh. I can't speak to the accuracy or the validity of it. So if it is true, great. But too soon to say, and surely, this not E3 did not produce anything on that front, so.
Yeah.
But, looking at a quarter century of Banjo-Kazooie, and thinking about just how starved Banjo-Kazooie fans are. Like the last real new thing was 3 years ago when Banjo-Kazooie were announced for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and even that felt like a absurd bit of fan service that Banjo-Kazooie fans just never get. How remarkable is it, really taking stock of it, though, that a game that has spawned so few sequels, and of course this is DK Vine, so we're not excluding not just Nuts and Bolts, but Grunny's Revenge and Banjo Pilot and Grunny's Revenge Mobile Edition and Grunny's Revenge Missions. And of course, we embrace everything. Banjo's appearance in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, Banjo's appearance in Minecraft, Banjo and Kazooie's appearance in Minecraft, and their appearance in hashtag IDARB. Like, we celebrate everything. But really, I mean, it's still a paltry amount of product when you look at franchises that still pack a punch from the 90s into today. Banjo-Kazooie is still vastly popular. And it's not just popular with 90s kids. It's not just popular with, millennials. It's popular with, I mean, not like as popular as a lot of other stuff, but it still has a pretty sizable fandom with Zoomers and the youth, Dustin. The youth do still like Banjo-Kazooie. And I think it speaks to the inherent quality of that original game and its sequels, but also just to how utterly unique Banjo-Kazooie is as a property and how nobody's really been able to replicate its charms. It can still pull in fans who weren't even alive when that first game was released.
Yeah, I've played it in front of my nephew, and he seemed to like it. Like, I didn't show him the whole thing. He's a little young to have the world of video games thrust upon him, but he watched me play it for a little bit, and he was getting a big kick out of it. So I think once he's a little older, I might sit him down and be like, hey, wanna check out a video game?
Well, really, in the sex jokes, probably, you probably need to shield him from all the innuendos.
Right. Luckily, he can't read yet, so I'll just make up what they say.
Right.
Or for those parts.
Yeah. Or, just teach him the reality of the world right now through Banjo-Kazooie. I'm sure that's
how I learned. It's how everyone in my family will learn.
It's a perfectly fine foundation for any sexual wellspring of knowledge and education. So yeah, like it's honestly heartening to see. Like, even though I don't agree with the venomous way some people protest the lack of a new Banjo-Kazooie game, it does like make me feel good that something that I was a fan of when I was a kid still has such a reach 25 years later, even though it hasn't kept up the momentum that most series like Sonic or even Crash has had with sequels and sequels and remakes and sequels and ancillary media. Like Banjo-Kazooie just gotten by on the strength of its few games.
Yeah, just imagine if it had like tons. And I'm not bemoaning the fact that we don't have like endless sequels upon sequels in the Banjo-Kazooie series, but like if it's this strong without that, just imagine where it would be if it did. Like, would it be up there with like Sonic or Crash? Would it be considered like one of the all-time great IPs?
And of course you also have to contend with, the changing societal ins and outs. Like, 3D platforming did fall out of fashion for a while. And how would Banjo-Kazooie weather that? Well, we saw like that they did the nuts and bolts thing, which was hugely divisive. But would that be so divisive if we hadn't had any Banjo-Kazooie games between it and Tooie? Like, if we did have just a traditional Banjo-Kazooie game on, say, the Xbox.
Yeah, I feel like nuts and bolts would probably be seen a lot nicer if we had, because the thing is, if you wait 8 years and then totally change it, then they're not getting what they waited for. But if you have other games between that, it kind of softens that blow. It kind of reminds me of I was going to bring up a bad example. I was going to say how Mario Sunshine plays differently from, say, Mario 64, but I would say Nuts and Bolts is a bigger departure than even Sunshine was.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know, I just think it's cool that something as old and arguably dated as Banjo-Kazooie, people can still pick it up today, and yeah, it might feel a little janky compared to newer games. It can feel quaint and not as robust, but people can still see the charms of it. They can still be won over by the presentation, by the atmosphere, by the characters. I think that's incredible, and it really does speak to what a magnificent masterpiece Banjo-Kazooie was. That it can transcend the decades like that and still pull in people, even though it hasn't, like, the closest to a remaster it's gotten is the XBLA version, which was really just a nice little polish, but it wasn't like anything substantial. It still looks like an N64 game.
It didn't need it. It didn't need like substantial reworkings. Like, just give you the game, but looks nicer, widescreen, there you go.
Well, and replaying the original N64 version, really for the first time in years, when it came to NSO plus expansion pack, especially replaying it for DK Vine Done Slow, my Twitch series where I, replay the DKU extremely slowly. It did make me realize just how good Banjo-Kazooie still looks. all things considered. I mean, yeah, it doesn't look as good as a GameCube game or a Wii game or a Wii U game or a Switch game or an Xbox game or an Xbox 360 game or an Xbox One game or an Xbox Series S/X game, or is it X/S? But it doesn't look as good as those, but you know.
That's a lot of games it doesn't look as good as, but still.
But it's still, I can still play it and be like, oh wow. I don't know. I have some thoughts from my recent playthrough of Banjo-Kazooie, which I did for DK Mine Isn't Slow, which was for the N64 version, the one that came out 25 years ago. And I would just like to share them with you, Dustin.
I would love that, Hyle. I would love nothing more than to listen about things you enjoyed about Banjo-Kazooie.
Well, and if you have anything...
Or just thoughts.
If you have thoughts you want to share, feel free. Jump in.
Oh, totally.
Like if you said, you know what I like the bird. And I'm like, what do you mean the bird? And you mean Kazooie? And you're like, no, the other bird. And I'd be like, you mean Irie from Click Clock Wood? And you're like, yeah. I was like, okay.
Yeah, that one of the birds.
Good chat. So replaying it. So in my head, in my mind's eye, I had always remembered my least favorite worlds, generally, to be Clanker's Cavern and Rusty Bucket Bay.
Interesting. I get that. I think those are pretty popular, unpopular picks.
Okay, but I was replaying Banjo-Kazooie on my Nintendo Switch on NSO Plus expansion pack, and Clanker's Cavern was a surprisingly stronger world than I ever remembered it being. Like throughout any of my playthroughs, be it on the N64 or on Xbox 360 on up, I was like, you know, it's one of those early, like the first three worlds of Banjo-Kazooie, I would say, are concise. Like they're more compact. They're more like getting you used to how everything works. And they're not really as sprawling. I would say Bubble Gloop Swamp is where it really starts getting a little bit more spacious. And I'm doing this hand motion. You can't see it right now. I'm doing this hand motion, which unfortunately resembles Goatsy. And I'm not trying to be crass or crude, but I'm just like how do I define stretching something out? And apparently that's how I define it in my subconscious. And I'm sorry.
My favorite stage in Banjo-Kazooie was always Goatsy's Valley.
Oh God, I don't need to see that fan art. But poor Gobi. I think that like the first three worlds are really they're more training grounds. I know Spiral Mountain is the training ground, but I feel like Mumbo's Mountain, Treasure Trove Cove, and Clanker's Cavern kind of just put you through the paces. Clanker's Cavern is a little bit more intense, considering you have to like swim down into the depths and that stressful part with Gloop. But I always remember Clanker's Cavern as being like a really stressful affair, probably because of that bit. And I actually had fun with it this time around. And I was like, ooh, have I been misremembering it all these years? Well, then I got to Rusty Bucket Bay. The other world that I always just was like, about. And Dustin, Rusty Bucket Bay is a fucking blast, man. It was fun.
Yeah, I love Rusty Bucket Bay. I think one thing about Clanker's Cavern and Rusty Bucket Bay is they each have like one Jiggy that's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
But it kind of maybe just annoying enough to kind of taint your opinion of a world for a while. But I think once you get over that, they're both pretty strong levels. I mean, I love Clanker's Cavern, but I'd still probably put it in like the bottom half if I were to rank the levels. But Rusty Bucket Bay has like always been one of my favorites, despite the engine room one.
Yeah, I think I always just held the industrial, grimy worlds in less esteem. And I think it's because the aesthetics just don't naturally appeal to me. You know, I'm Mother Nature man. I'm somebody who's very much, I find resonance with the more aesthetically natural, soothing worlds and levels of Rare.
Right.
And maybe it's just the shadow of Grunty Industries from 2E kind of falling backwards in time and casting itself over the first game. But yeah, that was my biggest surprise of my recent playthrough is I like Clanker's Cavern. I love Rusty Bucket Bay. What the hell?
Your opinion totally changed on him.
I know in our live stream chat, Freezer, she loves Rusty Bucket Bay, and she chimes in and says, yeah, Rusty Bucket Bay is my favorite level. And DK Vine staffer Cameron is also there. Hello, Cameron. Cameron says, I adore Rusty Bucket Bay. It's like a preview of what I loved tonally about 2E. And yeah, that's actually a fair point. It's one of the few realms in Grunty's lair where Grunty is having a markedly like negative impact on the environment itself. Like most of the other realms, you know, she might send monsters into it, but it's still mostly like untouched by her hand. Rusty Bucket Bay, she's polluted fully, and that really extends to a lot of the themes of 2E and a lot of the themes that Rare touches upon throughout the entire DKU.
Definitely. It's also you also can't forget about the little grublin sailors who say hi every time they see you.
Yeah, I know. I love
that. Makes for a good stage.
I love those little seamen.
Yeah, those seamen are all it takes for a good stage.
Speaking of being out on the open ocean, in the chat we've got Sales. And Sales says, work at a retro game store with plenty of young foot traffic. Which I don't know why I just picture the Ninja Turtle ninja villains, but as toddlers coming in. That's a cute idea. But they say, can confirm there are teens that care about Banjo-Kazooie, even if they haven't played them outside Smash.
Good. That's great. I love that it can still connect. Like, it's not seen as a totally, antiquated game. People can still play it and have a pretty good time, I feel like.
Yeah. Anyway, when I was replaying Banjo-Kazooie, here's a realization that didn't sit well with me, and you might argue with me, Dustin. Mad Monster Mansion was the world I enjoyed the least.
See, that's very interesting. I don't know if I can agree with that, but I remember you had a pretty tough time with it.
I don't know why it just hit me so negatively, but I was just like, it was the only time in Banjo-Kazooie where I felt like the layout was frustrating, and it was frustrating me. And like for as much as I have replayed Banjo-Kazooie over the years, I don't have every like item committed to memory like I may DKC2, right? Like it's not this intimate. I remember exactly where every honeycomb or music note is. I was lost in Mad Monster Mansion, and I was just like, I don't like the way this world is structured. I still like it thematically. I still like a lot of the individual bits, but as a whole, that was the world I had the least amount of fun in.
I'm sorry about that, Hyle. I feel like I can't. I have played Banjo-Kazooie too. Like, I am kind of like that. I feel like I do have like almost every item location memorized. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh yeah, I could tell you where every single Mumbo token is, for example. But like all the big stuff, Jiggy's notes, I at least have the level layouts I know them like the back of my hand, pretty much. So like if I were to go into Mad Monster Mansion, I could just like knock that out in a little bit. But I'm sorry it didn't stick with you this time.
It's okay. Like don't get me wrong.
I don't know if it's my favorite stage. I think my favorite stage of all of them might be Treasure Trove Cove. But yeah, probably Treasure Trove Cove, then Rusty Bucket, then maybe Mad Monster Mansion. I don't know. I might need to think about it, like exactly how I would order them.
For me, the goats, which is a really fancy and clever way of saying the greatest of all time. It's still Click Clock Wood.
Click Clock Wood is great. I feel like it's kind of in the middle for me, even though I like it a lot, just because it can get a little tiring climbing up the same tree 4 times.
That tree was a bit of a pain, but I still feel like Click Clock Wood is the strongest closer of any 3D platformer.
It's great.
It's saying like, hey, we're ending the game in its last normal world, but not in a scary, like oppressive environment like lava or like a dungeon or anything like that. We're doing it in this verdant forest that celebrates the changing of the seasons. And you've got, just this like warm embrace of the cycle of life. And with it comes the highs, lows, and even melancholy, that comes with the passing of time. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's a staggering achievement in creative practice. And I don't know if any like similar game has approached just the sheer triumph in my mind that is Click Clock would.
Yeah, I like the bird in it.
Yeah, Irie. That was the melancholy, because it's sad when Irie leaves the nest, and you're like, oh, I'm never gonna have children because I can't handle this.
That's true. That's exactly what I was thinking every time I saw that big cartoon eagle.
I think that's why all DK Vine staffers are childless, sans pets, because we're just like, nope, I cried when Irie left. I can't go through it again.
I look at a child and I just see that little eagle and I say, I just can't bring myself to give you the worms you need.
Yeah, I know. I start cramming worms in the child's mouth and their parents call the police and I have to amstray.
I'm just trying to get a jigsaw piece here. Leave me alone.
I don't like to bring up anymore. I used to do it all the time. Comparisons to Super Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie. Because I know I have a bit of a reputation, especially from the, older days of DK Vine, where I tore down Super Mario 64 to build up Banjo-Kazooie. And I don't think that's fair to either game. I think, obviously, there wouldn't be a Banjo-Kazooie without a Super Mario 64, and that is verifiable fact. The fact that, the Dream team, as they were, the team working on Project Dream at Rare, were spinning their wheels trying to get something out of the game, and then finally they just looked at Super Mario 64 and it's like, fuck it, we'll just do this. And they, in no time at all, they churned out a masterpiece. Super Mario 64, like, showed them the way, and then they did something arguably better than that, but they wouldn't have done that if Miyamoto and his team hadn't gotten there first. But, Super Mario 64 is a game that I think the earlier worlds, mostly, like, there's some good, like, mid-worlds of Super Mario 64, like the tiny huge islands, whatever it's called, like, that's
yeah,
cool.
I think cool. That's what it's called.
Is it really? I was just being flippant. Okay.
I think it's called Tiny Huge Island.
Okay. Big Small Land. I don't know. Just use whatever sounds more dismissive. Outside of some examples like that, I feel like it's a game that has its strongest worlds up front, and then it really just peters out into nonsense by the end.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've said it before. I feel like the first handful of levels in that game, great. I'm having a great time. I think that game becomes miserable by the end. If I ever play through that game again, it'll be too soon.
See, that's a weird case too, because for a lot of us, especially those who were around back in 96, 97, 98, like, that was our first 3D platformer. So it was definitely like this huge liberating feeling. For as much as I wanted it to be a Donkey Kong game, I was still, like, mesmerized getting to run around as Mario. It was cool shit. And, Bum on Battlefield, amazing. Just running around the castle grounds, just spectacular. But by the time you get to the clock, or the sky, the last sky world,
Rainbow Ride.
Yeah. No, thank you, because then it just becomes what I hate about Mario games: an obstacle course.
Yeah, and the lame part is, I feel like TikTok clock, I almost called it Click Like Wood. TikTok clock, I think, is like, that's such a cool creative idea for a stage, just being inside a giant clock, but it's made completely miserable because of the camera angles.
Yeah.
I should be having a lot of fun in this stage. Nope, nuh-uh.
For as much as I dislike TikTok clock, I would like it if Rare would put a different TikTok clock in Sea of Thieves. So, yeah, like, Super Mario 64, like I said, outside of a few outliers, it really does just get progressively less interesting for me as you go along. Where Banjo-Kazooie, I think it starts strong, if a bit, like, unambitious, and it just ends with this spectacular statement. And like, honestly, like, when you, like, I feel like Banjo-Tooie doesn't do that. I feel like Banjo-Tooie almost suffers from, we've run out of ideas. And I know you're the Banjo-Tooie person among us, Dustin. Like,
right.
So here's the thing. Like, Dustin prefers Banjo-Tooie.
I do prefer Banjo-Tooie.
And I prefer Banjo-Kazooie, but we still like the other game. Like, I still very much like Banjo-Tooie. It's not my favorite of the two, but I still admire it, and I still have a lot of fun with it, just as Dustin does with Banjo-Kazooie. So this isn't like we're at odds with each other.
Like, Banjo-Tooie's, like, my favorite game ever made, and then Banjo-Kazooie's still in, like, my top 5.
And, Banjo-Kazooie is definitely in my top 3, and Banjo-Tooie is probably in my top 20. But that's still pretty
I'll take
good.
that.
That's still pretty good. And I still love and will defend Banjo-Tooie. And honestly, I probably think about aspects of Banjo-Tooie more than I do Kazooie. It's just, for me, it's a harder game to just pick up and go, right? Like,
even though I prefer Tooie, I totally agreed. Because Kazooie's the more compact experience, it's just easier to say, you know what? I could play through Banjo-Kazooie. I got like 6 hours to spare. But for Tooie, it's a commitment. You gotta be in the mood to play that.
Right, and unless I'm Diddy Kong at the beginning of Donkey Kong 64, I don't know if I'm in the mood.
That's true.
Yeah, I think Click Clock Wood is spectacular. Like, Donkey Kong 64 would have a much lesser idea, with its day-night cycle in Fungi Forest.
Yeah.
And, yeah, no, it tried. I still say Donkey Kong 64 finished stronger than Super Mario 64, because Hideout Helm was definitely a damn impressive way to end that game.
Yeah, you know what? I think I said it on Twitter when I last replayed Mario 64. I was so angry at that game, I made it a point to go to Twitter and say, Mario 64 is worse than Donkey Kong 64. Yeah, I said it.
Well, you know, you can pull Dustin's tweet up right now, and then you have 599 more tweets you can look at today, so.
Yeah, my one tweet is barely any.
But to Banjo-Tooie, like Cloud Cuckoo Land, it does feel like they just ran out of ideas, and it felt like almost a Super Mario 64 world that was so atypical of Banjo and its style. And like, I can almost support the idea of, wacky Cloudland as like, sure, that's an option, but it really didn't feel like they had anything to say. And it's the only time it really felt like the Banjo team didn't have anything to say. And I can't fault them for not wanting to make a third one after that. If they truly were just like out of ideas and they're like, Cloud Cuckoo Land, taffy monsters.
Yeah, it felt like, well, we have all these other ideas that just can't fit into any of these other worlds we have. Like, where are we going to put this Jello house? Where are we going to put Cheese World?
This talking can of beans. We know this talking can of beans is a license to print money, but he just doesn't fit anywhere.
We got to make a world just for this guy.
What about that dirty old bird lady? We got to bring her back somewhere.
Yeah, why not? Who cares?
Say she has a Cheeto page lodged in her vajayjay.
Yeah, everyone will love it.
See, I do think about Banjo-Tooie a lot, especially that element of it.
Yeah, especially the Vijay Cheeto page.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like Click Clock Wood is the antithesis of Cloud Cuckoo Land.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. It, like I said, not my favorite level in the game, but I like it a lot. I think having you go through that stage 4 times, one for each season, helps it feel bigger than the other stages. It's like, oh, this is a big, new, cool idea that hasn't been seen in any world up until now. You have new ideas up until the end.
That's really what's so refreshing about Banjo-Kazooie is it constantly surprises you, right? Like,
yeah,
it's a game that grows with each world. It doesn't just stop developing. Like, yeah, at a certain point you stop learning new moves, but it's still a game that continues to push the boundaries of what you expect it to be.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree with you.
And it
Hyle.
never goes outside the boundaries of what it shouldn't be, which I would argue Cloud Cuckoo Land does and Super Mario 64 does to a hideous degree. But
yeah,
pulling back a bit, I mentioned Spiral Mountain as the training area. I think Spiral Mountain might still be my favorite location in the DKU aside from the Congo jungle. It would definitely be the one I'd be most comfortable living in, assuming Grunny's lair isn't currently, active. And,
right.
Assuming there must be like shops just over the hill, right? Like shops and restaurants and convenience, cause otherwise I wouldn't want to live there, but it seems like a nice place to live, assuming there is like a grocery store just over yonder.
Yeah, I was gonna say you have one house in Spiral Mountain. So.
Well, I wouldn't live in that house. Like, let's say I have another house. Like, I live up near the vegetable garden. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, like when I think of like what would be a really pleasant place to live, assuming it's not getting attacked by a witch's monster army or what have you, I'm like Spiral Mountain really just feels like where it's at. Like a nice, simple, Hobbit-like existence.
It's just nice and cozy. I like its colors. One thing I don't like about Spiral Mountain going forward, like after Tui, is I feel like it kind of loses the warm colors that it had. Lots of greens, lots of yellows. It really makes it feel like a nice, comfy little countryside area. And I don't really like when they get, like, more naturalistic with the colors. But, in Kazooie and Tui, and I guess in Grunty's Revenge, I just really like its whole vibe.
Yeah. I like the way it looks in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Even Smash Ultimate, I feel like, gets a little far away from what I like about it, but it's better than Nuts and Bolts, I think.
Like, I like the way it looks in Nuts and Bolts, but I see what you're saying. Like, I think Ultimate,
I think it's done very well.
I think Ultimate reins it back towards closer to what you're talking about, where it's just this very, like, verdant countryside. Maybe it still has a little bit too much cragginess to it than you would like, but I was really impressed with the Ultimate stage, even if the Ultimate stage isn't everybody's cup of tea, because it's one of those rotating stages, and it's just like calm.
Oh, I love it.
I mean,
it's
I love
favorites.
it too, and I don't think it's as oppressive as some of the other Smash stages where they just try to get everything in there, and it just becomes this miserable experience. I think like it's calm enough that you can enjoy playing on it. It's the rotating bit is okay. It's never like those moving stages where it's just like, all right, get on the lift. We're leaving this bit because we have to get in as many references as we can. I thought they handled it okay as far as like balancing everything.
Yeah, totally, because they're just changing like the platform layouts, which is totally fine by me, and it helps mix things up. It's not like, oh, the layout changes and we're going to have a bunch of things come in and attack you. It's not like Gruntilda comes in and it starts firing spells at the stage.
Right.
And then it spins around, then you're attacked by Collywobbles.
Oh, but I wish Collywobble was in there, man.
Yeah. Now that I say it out loud, now I do want that.
I know they're technically like multiple vegetables, but I still like to think of Topper, Collywobble, and Ball as singular characters, the first ones that pop out in the training sequence.
Right.
And then the extra ones are just other carrots, other cauliflower, other onions, but I don't know. I love Topper, Collywobble, and Ball, and I'll tell you why I love them, Dustin.
Oh, I can't wait to hear.
The Rare fucking just named them. I was just like, we're gonna give each one a name. Because okay, there's something about the team, Banjo-Kazooie, which was mostly the Donkey Kong Country and Donkey Kong Country 2 team. They had some, drift off to other projects at Rare. They had some join, like Ed Bryan. Like it wasn't just a one-to-one transition, but it was mostly that team. And that team at Rare, call them the Greg Mayles team, even though I feel like that doesn't do people like Chris Sutherland a justice. But Greg Mayles was usually the creative director or the design, the head of design. The titles change, but basically Greg Mayles was the creative visionary behind it. But that's not to sell anybody else short on that team. But I think they were always my favorite at Rare because my understanding of games aligns so closely with Greg Mayles' understanding of games. Like, he just understood what Lil Hyle was always looking for in games, and that's why that's why Donkey Kong Country just bowled me over, and I was like, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. And Donkey Kong Country 2 became my favorite game of all time, and then Banjo-Kazooie came out, and I was just like, yeah, eat shit, Mario. But they understood that fans like characters, right? Like, fans will just absolutely adore if you give a character a little bit of a hint of a personality and you give them an identity, a name. Just hang a name on a carrot with googly eyes, and your fans will treasure that forever.
We love Topper.
And it's what George Andres' team, or George Andreas himself, it's not a hive mind, but George Andreas, who took over Donkey Kong 64 in, I think, mid to late 98, he did not get that about Donkey Kong fans. And that's why they left most of those characters unnamed. That's why...
Yeah, even the ones that are not, like, drones, even the ones that are, like, supposed to be just one-time characters, they don't, like, I couldn't tell you what the buzzard in Angry Aztec is named. I remember that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, like, even the names that most people who are, like, online in this community know them as, is because we gave them fanon names. Like, Rodney the Hare, guess what? His name is not Rodney from Rare. It's because Matt Corna decided to name him Rodney because he looked like a Rodney to Matt Corna.
He just looks like a Rodney.
So, yeah, but this team, this Banjo-Kazooie team, my God, they got us, and they were just like, yeah, we're gonna name this onion Ball. We're gonna name this cauliflower Collywobble, which is, I think, a great name.
Both of those are great names, and forgive me if I sound ignorant or something, but where does the name Topper come from? Because he's a carrot, and I don't know what the significance of naming him Topper is.
The tops of carrots are bushy?
I guess so, yeah.
Well, I mean,
that's like saying, oh, that person has a head.
It's also the Topper is very, very phallic shaped, and so it wouldn't be bottomer.
I guess that's true. I didn't consider that one.
Yeah, think about it.
Cameron in the chat says carrot top, and Freezer says because he is a top. So I could buy either of those, I guess.
Yeah. Freezer agrees with me, and Carrot Top was big in 1998. The prop comic Carrot Top, Dustin.
Yeah, you know what? Now I know why he was called Topper.
Was in the movie Chairman of the Board.
You're so right about that.
Right.
About Chairman of the Board.
Anyway, I was also replaying Banjo-Kazooie, and I was marveling, not just at, like, the worlds I had underappreciated, or the worlds that I appreciated back then and appreciate even more now, but just the entire look of the game. We're talking about how it still looks incredible, all things considered, and I think a lot of it has to do with the environmental textures.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. The textures are just very nice all the way through.
It doesn't really share the same muddled look of so many other N64 games. Even N64 games that look great. Like, I'm gonna say Ocarina of Time. It looks really good, but there's this kind of, I don't know, blurriness to a lot of the backgrounds and environments. Just like, it just looks like it's like low resolution YouTube videos, right? And with Kazooie, what they've done is they just added like this splash of color to even the most mundane, like, pieces of metal in the game. And I don't know if this texture work was done by Stephen Hurst. Like, looking at the game's credits, Stephen Hurst is the most likely culprit behind this fantastic handiwork, but it might have also been a little bit of John Nash or Chris Peel, who are listed as more sketching and more doodling, respectively, in the credits. But it's just this really rich, gorgeous looking game, and I don't think your brain like fully processes why it looks so vibrant, but if you stop and really look at just every last little like piece of like wall polygon in the game, everything has some life to it. Everything is just rich and multifaceted in its visuals, and it's just a remarkable piece of engineering on the N64 in 1998.
I totally agree. One of my favorite things, just walking around like Grunty's lair, is seeing all the textures on all the walls. Like, sometimes you'll have pictures of some of the baddies mixed in there.
Yeah.
It's just a visual treat, just looking around and seeing things you never noticed before. I didn't notice until I think I knew at the time before my last playthrough, but I feel like it was only within the last couple of years that I noticed in Grunty's Furnace Fun, if you look up, you see a bunch of enemies looking down at you, just like a texture on the wall. I had no idea about that for the better part of like 22, 23 years.
Yeah, if you never like stop and use the camera in Grunty's Furnace Fun, like the booing and cheering, like whenever Banjo-Kazooie do something that's a win for them, you hear the booing from the crowd, and you think it's just like Gruntilda controlling like a voice box or something. Mm-hmm. There's actually supposed to be a crowd of baddies, an audience, a studio audience of Grunty's monster minions in the crowd, and you can see them if you like swing the camera around and look up.
Yeah, and there's no reason to. Like, that's why I had no idea about this. I had no reason to look up there and see these guys. So then when I did, I was like, whoa, that's crazy. They didn't need to put in that extra work, but boy, they sure did.
It's terrific, and it's just that level of detail, that attention to detail that Rare, to this day, Rare just goes above and beyond for it. Rare and Playtonic, really. Like, they just have that commitment. Like, this isn't game design 101. This is what I always say about the Rare philosophy versus the more tried and true Nintendo philosophy. And I think Nintendo has gotten better about this as, you know, they've brought in more younger devs who are kind of weaned on stuff like this, but back in the day, like, Nintendo wouldn't go that extra mile if it didn't have some prudent, like, benefit to gameplay, right? But Rare always would. They would always go that extra mile, be it, like, having this very mundane game option be serviced by a character instead of just an option on a text option on a menu. Like, no, let's just have a character do this. And it just makes it so much more lively and engages you, the player, and makes you more of a fan of just that particular element. Like saving in a Donkey Kong Country game could have just been done on a little screen, you know, like, but let's put a character behind that, right?
Right. Yeah. It's like we talked about on the Game Boy Advance version, the other week. they just made it an option, which makes sense, and I'm glad they replaced it with the minigames. But imagine if that was it. Imagine if it was just, oh, you just save from a menu, and I mean, when I say it out loud, that's probably the better, less stressful option. But still, I liked having a place with a character in charge of saving.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, like, I don't mean to rag on Retro's Donkey Kong Country games, which I very much love, but when they distill, like, everything down to one Kong helper, right? Like, oh, well, we can just have the shop and everything just be done by one Kong. It's just a waste to have it be spread out across the map. I'm just like, no! Because that's less characters we can have fun with. And
yeah, that's less stuff in the world.
Right, that's less to, like, break it up and to treat us like, oh my god, oh yes, I've finally gotten a Swanky. Yay, let's go see Swanky, which was always just a treat, right? And right. You know, no fault to Retro, those are still great games, but it is the difference between the Nintendo philosophy, which is just very much like, this is the academic way to make games and to make them correctly, where Rare, and yeah, Rare would sometimes be a little bit more rough and tumble, right? It wouldn't be as pristine as an experience, but for me, it was always just more just all-encompassing, ticking off what I love about immersing myself in another world, and Banjo-Kazooie did that just in abundance.
Definitely. One thing that comes to mind for me is the sandcastle cheat codes in Treasure Trove Cove. Any other game, you could just put in, like, cheat codes with the buttons or something, or like a cheat code menu where you type them in. Here, it's a place in the world you have to go to spell it. It's part of the lore and world that there is a place to enter cheat codes.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're gonna bring in this character, Cheeto, Grunty Spellbook, who is rebelling against Gruntilda. Here's this, all this backstory, and your brain can fill in the gaps of why her anthropomorphic spellbook is had enough with Gruntilda. And then we also have this other magic practitioner, Mumbo Jumbo the Shaman, and you know, he might engage with this sandcastle, and, you know, you have to drain it first, and here's this beach pail, Leaky, and it's just like, all this extra stuff, and you're just like, oh, Treasure Trove Cove is so cool, it has so much backstory behind it, and it's not really that deep. I mean, this isn't Tolstoy here, like, this isn't, you know, a Russian epic novel. This is a stupid game about a bear in tight yellow shorts with a bird in its backpack, and the bird sometimes shats out eggs. But it just really does work. Just a minimal amount of effort really just makes you all the more invested in the game world. And no, it might not be Game Design 101, but it's Greg Mayles' Game Design 101. Like, Greg Mayles understands emotions. Greg Mayles understands how to pull you, the player, into the world he and his team are trying to convey. And he's even done that with Sea of Thieves. I mean, Greg Mayles was the lead creative director on Sea of Thieves for its first couple of years. And that was like, when I went to Rare in 2016, like, we got to sit in on, like, what would be the typical Greg Mayles design meeting, right? Which was a treat. And so Greg Mayles, like, walked us through, like, his philosophy for Sea of Thieves. And he really, like, I've talked about this before in the conversation, but he talked about this wheel of emotion that, like, his thing is he wants the players to feel things when they play his games, in particular Sea of Thieves. Like, he wants to run the gamut of every possible emotion and to make sure that that's represented in the game. And
that's awesome.
Yeah,
and I would have loved to see that.
But you can see that even in things like Banjo-Kazooie, right? And
yeah,
it wasn't all just like one big jerk off, right? Like, yeah, this is a stupid game. Like, fundamentally, it looks stupid. Like, even in the name, it's stupid. But you feel things, you engage, you care about this merry gang of idiots. And, you're completely right. Like, the sandcastle is just a big example of that. Not even like bringing in all the other mysteries it was tied into eventually. Just from like that surface level, like you can get this one jiggy from it, but oh yeah, here's Cheeto, and you got to go back there. That's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah, that's great. Like any other game could have just been like, oh, here, you did what you needed to do. Here's a cheat code as your reward. We're going to flash it on screen for a little bit. Maybe you can go into a menu and it'll tell you your cheats, whatever. No, this one has a living spell book to give context to these cheats. It's great.
Yeah. God, I like Banjo-Kazooie, Dustin. Controversial opinion,
You know what? It's starting to grow on me.
You know, one thing I didn't realize until it came to NSO.
What?
I never realized that they actually changed the running shoes design between the actual N64 release versions, like the version 1.0 or whatever, and then the subsequent like cartridge releases. I never realized they changed.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, so I always thought they changed it for the XBLA version for some reason, to make it more consistent with Banjo-Tooie, because in Banjo-Kazooie, the running shoes, as they were known then, had the little red star on the side of them, like the white shoes with a red star, similar to the star on 2D's shirt, which we at DK Vine like think of as this sporting goods company, right? Like they have like 2D shirt, the running shoes, even Diddy's shirt, and I guess other things from Diddy, like the tennis racket. Like I know that's kind of become Diddy's emblem, but we've always associated as this like sporting goods company, and it appears in other things like the motorboat in Conker's Pocket Tales. Like, yeah, they make nautical equipment. They're like a much more I don't know monumental version of Nike in the Rare Archipelago. Like they have their fingers in every sporting pie.
Right. Yeah.
But no, they apparently, I think the most likely case is that it looked too much like Converse, Converse's actual sneaker. And so they had to change it, or they felt compelled to change it to avoid any potential legal challenges to the lightning bolt that was used for the turbo trainers in Banjo-Tooie.
Yeah. Do you have a preference between the star and the lightning bolt?
I'm star until the day I die, just because that ties into the greater DKU, like unspoken lore, just one of those little connections that even though it might not be planned, even though it might never be acknowledged, we at DK Vine can say, yes, but you see the motorboat in Conker's Pocket Tales, same thing as the running shoes, and the same thing as 2D's shirt. But yeah, depending on when you got Banjo-Kazooie on the N64, you might have the lightning bolt on the shoes, or you might have the star.
Yeah, totally agreed. It's all about the star. It all comes back to the star.
So, and in my headcanon, I do consider the Turbo Trainers to be a rival sneaker company to whatever the Star. We got to come up with a better name than the Star Company. Like we never came up with a good fanon name for it.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments what you think the fanon name for the Star Company is, and we will make a t-shirt and put it on our t-shirt shop.
Yeah, if we like it, we will take it.
And then Converse will sue us.
If we're lucky, maybe we'll be a big enough deal.
Yeah, we'll buy out Converse. Who's the boss now? Not Tony Danza, it's us.
Gonna be some changes around here.
So, sometimes here at DK Vine, we do run into the surprised person. And I brought this up on social media the other week. There used to be this site called Twitter. I brought it up there. It doesn't exist anymore. By the time this episode goes live, that might be the case. But some people are surprised that DK Vine follows and supports Banjo-Kazooie. As much as we talk about how the younger crowd do like Banjo-Kazooie, it's not universal. There are still the people who were like, we don't want Banjo and Kazooie in Smash because that's a franchise for boomers. Remember that?
Oh, I remember that already.
That was when Zoomers, or those even younger than Zoomers, they thought that there was only going to be the potential for one Xbox Studios character, and they really wanted Minecraft Steve, and so they were really railing against Banjo and Kazooie. And
it's such a weird argument. It's like, oh, we don't want this series in Smash because it's for boomers. It's like, you realize this is Super Smash Brothers, right?
Well, I think
How many of these series are for boomers?
I think Super Smash Bros. 4, though, really put this notion in people's heads that...
Right, but even that had, like, the Duck Hunt dog.
Okay, yeah, but I think by and large people thought you have to have some sort of relevancy.
Right.
Relevancy was the key term. That was what people argued for King K. Rool. King K. Rool is no longer relevant, so... King K. Rool King, and of course that's just all, like, that's people picking and choosing what they want to believe, but
they make up their own rules to go with what they want to see.
Right, it's Calvin Ball. But I think that like, just putting that aside though, there are people who don't really know the history of Banjo-Kazooie, and sometimes they think like Diddy Kong Racing. Like, they don't think of it in terms of the way it was presented back in the day. They view it as, oh, it was like a big rare crossover, like with guest characters, like latter-day Mortal Kombats, or even Smash Brothers. Like, Diddy Kong Racing, when it came out, it was not presented as, here's this big all-star rare crossover that you've all been waiting for. Because nobody, unless you were like reading Nintendo Power, or you were on America Online, or whatever equivalent in your country to the early dial-up internet was, you didn't know what Banjo-Kazooie was. You didn't know what Conker's Quest was. So when Diddy Kong Racing came out, these characters were introduced via backdoor Donkey Kong characters. Like, okay, here's this character Banjo. He is Diddy's friend that Diddy met on a wacky adventure that you didn't get to see. But Diddy is enlisting Banjo's help, and Squawks is coming to Banjo's house with Diddy's plea for help, and Banjo's on his way. And here's Conker, and Conker met Diddy and Donkey Kong when they were exploring Conker's neck of the woods. That's a tale for another time. But it was not presented as, here's Banjo. You all know him from the upcoming Smash game Banjo-Kazooie. It was, here's this new character, Banjo. He is Diddy's friend.
Here's a stupid bear, and he's here to race.
Here's the 14th bear we've introduced in the last year. God damn it.
And you better love him.
So, like, people are surprised that we cover Banjo-Kazooie at DKVine because they view us as a Donkey Kong website. Because it's been so long that they don't understand the context of Diddy Kong Racing, and that Diddy Kong Racing made Banjo-Kazooie and Conker Donkey Kong spin-offs.
Right. Yeah, Diddy Kong Racing is basically the entire crux of the DKU.
I mean, basically, yeah. I mean, it's a little bit more nuanced than that, but broadly speaking, yeah. But people are sometimes surprised, and what I really like, and this is what I brought up on social media, is sometimes there's the Randy Younger Banjo fan. Like, not even the people who were, like, complaining about Banjo and Kazooie getting into Smash because of Minecraft. But the people who are Banjo-Kazooie fans, but still don't really have a firm grasp of the history, the chronology. And so they just see DKVine and they're like, like we used to do when looking at, I don't know, RareNet or whatever, like larger rare fan sites existed when we were just starting out. But they like come at us and they're like, yeah, Banjo-Kazooie is a much better game than Donkey Kong 64, you idiot.
You absolute fool.
And I'm like, yeah, I know.
Yeah, we all know that.
I know.
Everyone knows.
And that's why I love Banjo-Kazooie. And I
we're on the same team.
I routinely critique Donkey Kong 64 while acknowledging the things it does do right. Like, what are you getting at? Do you not know? Are you this clueless that you do not know that we love Banjo-Kazooie just as much as we do the Kongs? Like, what?
How can you come in here and say we don't love Banjo-Kazooie?
That aside, though, Dustin, it is remarkable to me that, 25 years on, and more than 20 years after the Rare buyout, Banjo-Kazooie has somehow remained this sister series to Donkey Kong. Despite the legal divorce between Nintendo and Rare, Banjo-Kazooie is still very much, in so many ways, just Donkey Kong's, like, ride or die partner in video gamedom.
Yeah.
And we talked about Banjo and Kazooie getting into Smash and what a big deal that was, but that was also a really vindicative moment for us, for those of us who, like, followed along from the beginning, went from Donkey Kong Country to Diddy Kong Racing, and then from Diddy Kong Racing to Banjo-Kazooie, because that Best Friends trailer from E3 2019, that is the most surreal after the fact vindication for everything we do. And I know some people try to move the goalposts and say, well, it doesn't mean anything because
always moving that goalpost. No matter if we get a nice little thing, it's not good enough for them.
No, because people always have to be right about everything. And I can admit when I'm wrong about things, like Super Mario 64 is not a glorified tech demo. There, I said it. I was wrong.
Yeah, it's just a half good game.
yeah, it's just a game that gets progressively worse. Unlike that masterpiece, Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a glorified tech demo. It's just a game that gets miserable by the end.
But Banjo-Kazooie would not exist if it wasn't for Super Mario 64.
Yeah, it's a very important game.
So it's not a glorified tech demo. It's a very well done tech demo.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh no, it's a masterpiece of its time.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, just like seeing that K. Rool trailer like replicated and having Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, and King K. Rool be the introduction of Banjo-Kazooie to Smash, and having Banjo-Kazooie show up in the Congo jungle outside Donkey Kong's treehouse. Oh my god. Okay, so when I like theorized about the possibility of Banjo and Kazooie getting into Smash, like starting with E3 2018, I had different like versions of the trailer in my head, and they would always involve Donkey and Diddy, or at the very least Diddy, right? But I knew like I was just putting my own wants and desires onto it. Like I was always just picturing like something where Diddy hugs Banjo and Kazooie, like, hello old friends, but what we got was even better than my wildest dreams. Let me believe.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. You get Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, and K. Rool cheering because Banjo-Kazooie came back.
Yeah, I still can't believe they did it. And, we recorded our reaction. It was me, it was Cameron, it was Jeff, it was Mitchell, and we were just sitting on that couch in the Love Shack, which is what we call it, our E3 den that year. The very last DK Line E3, by the way. The very last E3. Sad to say.
What a good one to go out on, though.
I mean, yeah, that there could have been worse ones to go out on. But, I think it was Cameron that said something to the effect of, "This is perfect." And I didn't even register how perfect it was at the time. It was just, it almost seemed like, oh, this is natural, right? Like this is, of course this would happen. And like, it's funny because and I think I just brought this up on the conversation when they cut to Donkey Kong's gaping mouth when he did the yawn. And you're just like, what? And Jeff said, it's another rival. They're repeating the Rivals trailer. It's going to be another series villain. And I was just thinking, oh, it's Banjo and Kazooie. That was just my thought. Like, of course it's Banjo and Kazooie because this is DKU. And of course, like, that seems ridiculous, but I was right. What?
Yeah.
I still can't believe they did it. It was such a beautiful way to bring it back to something that, of course, we have kept that, flame alive all these years, but I wouldn't have blamed them had they completely ignored that history, because it's a history that, like, why would they want to celebrate this connection that, Nintendo and Microsoft can never sever, no matter how much they both may want? Like, it'll always exist, this history between the two. So to see them just lean into it and be like, yeah, Banjo and Kazooie are essentially Donkey Kong characters. Here you go.
Love it. Love to see it. Kind of on a smaller scale, something that I really liked was when Sakurai used to post pictures all the time on the Smash Brothers Twitter. And I think there was one point where there was like a ton of game anniversaries, like all around the same time. And one of the ones he posted was for Diddy Kong Racing.
Uh-huh.
And it was Diddy and Banjo together on, I think, like the Pilot Wing stage plane. Or
I remember
some
that,
sort of plane. Yeah, that was just great. Just to say, like, oh yeah, we're referencing the time Diddy and Banjo were together. It was something that they just never can otherwise.
Yeah, and
or never do.
Even before Super Smash Bros. Ultimate made this possible, it's been said that aside from Rare's Donkey Kong Country and Land games, when Retro was breaking down what Donkey Kong Country Returns was going to be, they looked at those 6 games for influence, and maybe to a lesser extent Jungle Beat, but really those 6 games, the Country and Land trilogies. And they said they also looked at Banjo-Kazooie. And I think that's so nuts that they did that.
Why would you need to look at Banjo-Kazooie for a new DK game? That's great.
Not even the same, platforming genre. It's just...
Exactly.
But yeah, they said they looked at Banjo-Kazooie. And I'm just like, cool. And you can maybe see a little bit of mild influence here or there. Like the boss Stu definitely has some Breagle vibes to him, and
right,
there's puzzle pieces.
I think I was about to say the biggest one is collecting puzzle pieces in every level.
Yeah, but even back as far as 2010, 2009, whenever that game really kicked into gear development wise, you had the connection between the two acknowledged. And, Banjo-Kazooie, every time Banjo-Kazooie has gotten a new game, there has been some reference, some callback to its roots with Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong Racing. Even if it's something as minor as Tip-Top from Diddy Kong Racing becoming this minor reoccurring Banjo-Kazooie character. Even when Tip-Top doesn't appear, some aspect of him is referenced, like the Love Shack, another Love Shack, not the E3 place, but another Love Shack where his parents just screwed, ravaged each other, left DNA samples all over the place.
To be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, be like fly paper, you get stuck.
You would not survive.
Of course, there's, the Naughty and Click Clock Wood. There's, just out and out references to Diddy Kong Racing in Nuts and Bolts. They just flat out reference Diddy Kong Racing, and Banjo also references Taj and Wizpig, and they've never tried to distance itself. Espresso, of course, just out and out appears in Banjo Pilot because at that point the team didn't care and they were just reusing assets from Diddy Kong Pilot. But
we got to get this game out the door. Just throw the ostrich in.
Yeah, who cares? So I like to say Diddy wrote in Espresso to watch Banjo in his races in Banjo Pilot. But
I'm gonna watch my friend and his mortal enemy race in planes.
I know younger fans, or those uninitiated in the concept of the Rare Shared Universe, will look at Mario as Donkey Kong's sister series, which, fair. I get it. Especially this year, of course, that's going to be in vogue. That's going to be what people think of when they think of Donkey Kong, and it's like, oh, and Mario. Donkey Kong is this separate but interlinked thing to the Super Mario series. But Banjo and Kazooie will always be Donkey Kong characters to me, first and foremost. Like, that is what I associate. Like, what is Donkey Kong's sister series? Oh, Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah, totally. Even if, like you said, Mario is definitely the one that has that connection with Donkey Kong way more often. And, that's fair. But I'm always going to be a bigger Banjo-Kazooie guy than a Mario guy. Mm-hmm. That's going to be the series I think of alongside Donkey Kong.
Like, I know Greg Mayles never set out to make a game set in the same world as Donkey Kong. He's on record as saying that. And, in his mind, he wasn't just, oh, well, yeah, this will really help build the Rare shared universe, this Banjo-Kazooie game. This is going to be an exciting new addition to the world. Like, that wasn't what he was doing. There was a long evolution to get from Dream Land of Giants to Banjo-Kazooie. But when they decided to put Banjo in Adventure Racers, which became Pro-Am 64, which became Diddy Kong Racing, and Rare stumbled upon the idea to use Diddy Kong Racing as a backdoor pilot for Banjo-Kazooie and Conker, it was probably the most brilliant way to market both games that they could have ever hoped for, and to create lifelong fans of all three properties.
Definitely. It has Diddy Kong, Banjo, and Conker in this main cast of this game. Two of them are getting games coming out soon. Like, I remember being super interested in Conker's Bad Fur Day, mainly because I was like, oh, that's Conker. That's the guy from Diddy Kong Racing. I forgot he was getting a game.
Yeah, a lot of people forgot because it was so long, relatively so long. Yeah. Back in those days, that was a really long time.
It felt like an eternity.
And, that was an era where Rare really could do no wrong. It reminds me of, like, pre-pandemic, like, Marvel Studios, where just, like, everything they did seemed to come out on top, just like the carrot. It was like, they were handed this enormous L, which means lost, Dustin.
Right. Oh, I know.
With Banjo-Kazooie's delight, because Banjo-Kazooie was queued up, was this huge opportunity for Rare, because it was lined up to be Nintendo's big holiday game for 1997. Like, the year coming off of the launch year for the N64. Like, the N64 itself and Super Mario 64, they were the big attractions for Holiday 96. Holiday 97 was going to be Rare's big game, but it wasn't going to be ready in time, and they sort of knew it, and they sort of, like, backed themselves into this corner, and it could have been severely damaging for the studio's reputation, for their relationship with Nintendo. They were in trouble, but, Nintendo, like, they had, like, lined up all of this stuff, like Taco Bell promotion. Several $1 million went into this. There's going to be a tie-in promotion for Banjo-Kazooie at Taco Bell. Holiday 97. But Rare, against the wall, like the future of the studio with a gun to its head, what they did was, well, we've got this other game. We've got Pro-Am 64. What if we just put a little spit polish on it, make it Diddy Kong Racing, and make Banjo and Kazooie identifiable properties before their games even come out. And we're going to turn them into stealth Donkey Kong spin-offs. So all these little idiots who love Donkey Kong Country, they're gonna buy this game, and they're gonna see Banjo.
They're gonna shit their pants when they see this bear.
They're gonna see Banjo, they're gonna see Conker, and they're gonna be like, I like these characters because they're Donkey Kong characters. And then, bam, we're gonna hit them. Banjo-Kazooie. Bam, we're gonna hit them with 12 Tales Conquer 64, and they're gonna be like, I have to get those games too. It was,
I gotta own them all.
It was ingenious. I mean, it was shared universe, like, marketing way before the MCU made it in vogue. And like, yeah. This wasn't Rare's intention, but this is how they turned, well, I was going to say chicken shit into chicken salad, but I don't like chicken salad and I'm a vegan. So like, I would honestly rather eat chicken shit, but I can't because I'm a vegan and we vegans don't eat any products by animals, even if it's their, like resplendent bowel movements.
That's an interesting thing to say.
I like how that's the most intriguing thing I've said for Dustin all episode is that vegans can't eat the shit of animals.
Yeah, I would, if given the choice between these two things I couldn't eat, I'd rather eat the chicken shit than the chicken salad. That makes Dustin go, what an interesting thing to say.
But I'm saying I can't even eat the chicken shit. I would have to go hungry.
Right. That was your last option.
Yeah. So I don't like that expression because that's lose-lose for me.
They turned chicken shit into a glorious grapefruit.
I don't like grapefruit.
How's that one?
I like grapefruit flavored stuffs. It's fine. But like grapefruits, I just associate with being old because old people eat grapefruit. and it's just like, I don't want to be old. I know I'm getting up there in comparison. I mean, Banjo-Kazooie is 25 years old, so I know, but... Anyway, just for the record, I love Conker 2. I'm sorry, Conker. Like, to me, Conker always felt a bit more removed from, like, Donkey Kong, like the core of the DKU. Like, even before Bad Fur Day, even before that shift happened, Conker still felt like, oh, and also there's Conker. Like
very, very cutesy, cartoony.
Yeah, like, I was still very much, like, excited about 12 Tales Conker 64. I was still excited about Conker's Pocket Tales, of course. And I still very much like Conker, and it's still like the third pillar of the DKU, but I think it's probably because Banjo-Kazooie has that shared heritage of the Donkey Kong Country and Donkey Kong Country 2 team, by and large.
Yeah.
Like, it
definitely.
It would feel like part of the same world as Donkey Kong, even if Diddy Kong Racing didn't explicitly tell us it was. Like, even if it wasn't for Naughty and Tip Top and all the references, I would play that and be like, I could see this just being across the sea from Donkey Kong Island. And Conker is a bit more of a stretch. It's a bit more like harder to make out. And because it is a different team, it wasn't like the Donkey Kong team or any Donkey Kong team that really worked on Conker.
Yeah, I think part of it's because Banjo-Kazooie's worlds, for as themed as they are, still feel kind of more grounded in a world. But then you look at 12 Tales Conker 64, and you have stuff like the ancient Greece world with like the giant Cyclops or the dinosaur world even, which you would eventually get in 2E anyway. But it felt very like. It didn't feel so much like a world with a lot of thought put into it. It was more just, what can we have as a theme for a world for a character to go in, rather than feeling like, oh yeah, here we have like jungles, pirate ships, we have beaches, we have a place with a ship. So Conker feels a little more fantastical than even Banjo-Kazooie does, which is weird since it's basically a fairy tale. But Conker felt like maybe a step even farther away from DK than that.
Yeah, and you mentioned the ancient Greece world. Do you remember when Conker was dressed like a gladiator? I could not imagine any DKU character dressed as a gladiator.
Yeah, that would have been the straw that broke the camel's back. If I saw that, I never would have joined the DK Vine forums.
Poor Gobi, no matter what reality he's in, his back is getting broken. No, but yeah, I mean, obviously I love Conker, and it's still like a very important part of the DKU, but it was always just felt like a little bit more removed than Banjo-Kazooie. Like, for me, like Donkey Kong and Banjo-Kazooie, they are intertwined, and they always shall be, while Conker's kind of like over here, like the redheaded squirrel.
Conker's like another island away.
Yeah, the redheaded squirrel stepchild who's just kind of like, and also there's Conker over here. And yeah, as the DKU has evolved, we've gotten even more abstract and removed, but I don't know, even things like Star Fox Adventures feel more close than Conquer sometimes does. And that's on another planet. Like, it's in another solar system. But I think it's because Star Fox Adventures was mostly Diddy Kong Racing veterans doing that game. And it started off as just a timber game and, you know, evolved from there. So it still has that DNA in it. And Conquer never really has. And of course, Chris Seaver, even more than Greg Mayles, would like hold up his nose at the idea of a shared universe, even though that's what Diddy Kong Racing laid down. And of course, Conquer's Pocket Tales even had a little bit more references in there, like having armies and what have you. So,
yeah. Here's a question for you, Hyle.
Sure.
So I know we were talking about Banjo-Kazooie stages earlier, but and you were praising some of them, but I don't think I know what your number one favorite is. Is it Click Clock Wood?
I would say so. Like, as far as like worlds I like to play, it might be a toss up between it and Treasure Trove Cove. Freeze's Peak, if it wasn't for the Sir Slushes, and I love a Sir Slush. You know I do. But
of course.
They get a little bit of a nuisance until you take them out. But yeah, I do like the vibe of Freeze's Peak. But I would say probably Click Clock Wood, just because I think it is a triumph of everything I love about Rare. And it's communicated in such an innovative way. It's almost like, whoa, like, are you sure Miyamoto didn't do this? That's not to like diminish the work of Greg Mayles and everybody involved, because of course I hold them in such high esteem. They are my favoriteest of my favorites. But, you know, Miyamoto has the reputation of being the innovator, being the idea person. I mean, I just said there wouldn't be a Banjo-Kazooie if there wasn't a Super Mario 64. What I've always admired about Greg Mayles is he's been able to take those ideas and make them, I think, even more fun and even more polished with a presentation that I find to be more endearing. But I still fully like admit there wouldn't be a Donkey Kong Country, there wouldn't be a Banjo-Kazooie if it wasn't for the Super Mario series. It's, you know, Brothers World 64. But that being said, I think Click Clock Wood is just the height of their creative powers. It's such a fun notion, and it's able to celebrate nature in such a way that actually it's a comfort to me as I get older. I look at like the cycle of the seasons and it brings me peace, like knowing that spring will always come around again, like viewing our turbulent political times and the strife and the anguish that we often find ourselves in, marginalized groups. You try to be an ally and you just like see all of this oppression spring up, but knowing that eventually the tide always turns and beauty wins out and kindness, compassion, love wins out. And I see that in Click Clock Wood. And maybe I'm an idiot because it's a world with talking beavers and angry bees and a squirrel that ate his nuts too early. Stupid squirrel. I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, that's all cool. I like when you help the squirrel find his nuts.
Yeah, and then you break into his bedroom in the winter and it's like, bam, chicka, wah, wah.
What's going on here?
Yeah, and then we asked Rareware, hey, what's Nabnut's lady friend? And Lee Loveday said Nibble Nut.
And we were like, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's all we needed. Yeah, I said earlier my favorite stage is Treasure Trove Cove, and part of it's just because I like beach levels in like any game. It's just a fun, sunny archetype. But, part of it's also because I feel like it's the first world that really feels like a world. Cause Mumbo's Mountain is great, but it's very small, very condensed. You really are still coming to terms with like the game itself. There really isn't that much to do, not a lot of landmarks. Treasure Trove Cove is when you're finally like, oh, this is a huge world that I can explore. I can just, like, find any sort of challenges and characters here. So I really get that feeling of the game finally opening up. Especially, one of my favorite parts of it is, so I usually save the lighthouse for last.
Yeah.
Just because it's a little out of the way. Like, you gotta use the flying pad to get to the ledge to go up there. But I feel like it's a good one to end on because I really like just being so high up that you can't even hear the music anymore.
It's a great touch.
It's just such a great way to cap off the level. So no music, but then you get like the last of the music notes, the last of the Jinjos, the last of the Jiggies. It just feels like it really, comes to a point at that lighthouse. It's great. But I also love all the little mysteries in Treasure Trove Cove. Like, we brought up the sandcastle earlier. There's Shark Food Isle, which as a kid I thought was the coolest thing before the whole cheat code thing. I was like, oh, I love Shark Food Isle. I want to be able to raise that. Just because I knew there was more to it than we were seeing, that made it like the most important part of this stage. But you also get like lots of great NPCs, like the classic Leaky the Bucket. Who could forget?
No arguments for me.
There's also like Snacker. That's a great thing. Going in the water and having a shark come and attack you. Oh man, it's just such a fun, cool stage. Captain Blubber, I would say, is one of the like breakout side characters from Banjo-Kazooie. His whole ship is stranded on the shore. That's great. He has a whole story to him. He needs you to find his gold. Go get that gold, please. It's just great. I love this world. The music is wonderful. It just all comes together.
Yeah, I like Captain Blubber because his story, like so many other Banjo-Kazooie characters, his story continues throughout subsequent games.
Yeah, his story's not over with the first game. You get to see him in Banjo-Tooie. Even in Grunty's Revenge, you have, like, Little Blubber there.
The Pirate Scouts, right, where you see, like, Blubber in 1978, 5 years after Watergate.
Yeah, if only you could talk to him, he would say, boy, can you believe it's already been 5 years?
Boy, I'm getting old.
It's all downhill from here. And unfortunately, he might be right about that, considering where he ends up.
Freezer in a live stream says, meanwhile, Freezy Peak is full of racism, of course referring to Wazza, the walrus.
That's true. Wazza's such a jerk.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I have to admit, if a bear was coming towards me, I might react the same way. I'd probably be like, a bear is coming at me.
Then again,
holy shit.
In this world, bears are pretty benign. Like, you've got...
Yeah, there's lots of friendly bears.
You've got the 14 Brothers bear, including Bachelor, of course. Not including Bear, which is not a character. It's just bizarre. But and then you've got Banjo, and you've got Boggy's whole family, which, I realize, like, if Boggy's coming at you, it's like, oh, what does this dirtbag want from me? Stay away. I think, like, the only, like, antagonistic bear, really, is Bashmaster from Tropical Freeze.
Yeah, he wasn't even around yet at this time.
Right, so if a bear's coming at me, I wouldn't be like Waz, I'd be like, oh, hello there. What can I do you for?
Yeah, can I trade you an item for a banana bird or something?
And if it's Boggy, he'd be just like, oh, do you want to watch me jerk off? And it'd be like, no. And then I'd be like,
absolutely.
But Boggy shot first there, no pun intended. Like, wait for him to step in it, no pun intended. And just like, let him, cast the first stone, no pun intended. Anyway.
I feel like if it were to happen nowadays, I would probably say yes to Boggy. Like, if I was meeting him for the first time in Banjo-Kazooie, I'd be like, ew, no, I don't want to watch you jerk off. But if he asked me now, I'd be like, well, you are Boggy the Bear from the Banjo-Kazooie series. I didn't even know you existed for real.
I'm so starved for new Banjo content that sure.
I'll take it, sure.
Yeah.
The equivalent of Banjo-Kazooie and Smash.
Yeah, can I tape this for my YouTube channel?
This would be great. There's plenty of fans like me who just really need a win right now.
Dustin, we have some calls.
Oh boy, do we ever.
We do. People really wanted to call in for this episode. This is the first Banjo-Kazooie episode we've done in a spell. This season of the Kongversation has been very Kong-centric, and we haven't gotten back around to Banjo-Kazooie in quite some time, probably because there's just been a complete lack of subject matter to talk about in the news when it comes to Banjo-Kazooie, save for the 25th anniversary. So,
right.
People were eager to call in. Of course, you can always call into the DK Vine hotline at 1-202-630-VINE. That's 8463. You can leave a message whenever you want, but we usually only play the calls that pertain to the topic at hand. So, if you've called in and we haven't played your call, that's usually because, well, we just haven't come around to an opportune moment for your call, but we are taking all the calls that we've gotten in the last week or so pertaining to Banjo and Kazooie and the 25th anniversary. So this first caller, they did the thing where they split their calls into two parts. So we will play those back to back and then we will reply.
Hello, this is Channel Mage. I've been watching the Kongversation for a while now, and I've come to my attention that it's Banjo-Kazooie's 25th anniversary in a couple days when I called this, and I was wondering what you guys would like to see in a Banjo 3E of sorts, or if possibility of it becoming reality, because I'd love to see a new Banjo game, but considering what I've seen with a lot of the people who work on it, now that a lot of the people behind it are working at Playtonic, and Greg Mail seems to have his own way of wanting it to come out, like from Twitter, I saw some of his tweets, and I just think maybe that it's not meant to be, at least not by Rare necessarily. It could be, but at the same time, maybe a new team could work on a new Banjo game, and I think that would be great. Anyway, thank you for answering my call, and can't wait to see your conversation on it if there is one. Okay, bye. Yeah, it's Channel Mage again. Don't mean to send too many messages, just wanted to reiterate or expand upon my question earlier about Banjo 3E and the 25th anniversary of Banjo-Kazooie. I just wanted to say that I looked into it, and it seems more like what I meant to say was that the Greg Mail's Twitter is like, he said a long time ago around the time Ukulele first came out that he doesn't want to make another Banjo-Kazooie game unless it innovates the series, and considering it's been a while, I'm not sure. Because considering all the games that they've developed in the past that didn't fall through, I'm unsure. So I don't know if a Banjo 3E will come out, but I would like to see it, at the very least, maybe retrace back to Banjo's Xbox remake that got canceled, Banjo X. I think that would be a great way to get fans back into the series while also changing enough that it would feel more in line of a new Banjo game, and it would test the waters of what if the fans, will support Banjo series again. That's what I think would be cool. Anyway, thank you for your time, and maybe I'll call again, hopefully with more composure. This is my first time calling, so I'm a little, excited, but also not sure how to compose my questions yet. All right. Goodbye. Thank you for your time. All right. See you later.
Well, hey, thank you so much for the calls. It's always great to get a first-time caller. And don't worry.
Definitely.
Do not worry about how you come across, because I gotta be honest, I've done, like, how many episodes of the Kongversation now? Like, it's getting up there.
1,000,000,000,000,000, probably.
There'll be any point in any episode where I'm talking and I realize I have no idea where I'm going. I'm just saying words and I'm just like, oh shit, what am I doing here? And I have to quickly bring things around. And, so I get it, but you're not alone. We're all just a bunch of clowns behind microphones or phones or
yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah. So, no, and you're great. You're perfectly composed. Don't worry about it. People don't worry about it. We're not here to judge anybody. We're all friends. We're all just talking about this together. You're in, like company. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is where a lot of our calls are going to, venture into this Banjo. We'll call it Banjo 3E. I don't know if that's the best term for it, but the much
a hypothetical new Banjo game,
right? Calling it Banjo 3E kind of circumvents nuts and bolts, and you don't want to like forget nuts and bolts, but would I get it. I get why people use that term. We'll just call it the next Banjo game. And yeah, like Greg Mayles. Like let's talk about Greg Mayles, because Greg Mayles, by and large, seems to always do, or historically has done, 2 games in a series and has moved on, right? And that's right. Really just been Greg's MO, either by choice or by circumstance. Did 2 Donkey Kong Country games and said, I said my piece. I don't have anywhere else to take this. And to be fair, if you go out on Donkey Kong Country 2, yeah, like bye, like that's a mic drop moment right there. Get out of there. And to be fair, I think that worked out well. Like, of course, we at DK Vine, huge Donkey Kong Country 3 fans. And I think like giving the reins to the understudies as they were of the Donkey Kong Country series, letting them do their own thing, like on the bones of where they left off with DKC2, worked out great. I mean, that was just a perfect transition. And then after Banjo 2E, he was like, all right, done with Banjo. At least gonna take a break from Banjo for a while. And then they moved on to Grab by the Ghoulies, and would have loved to have done a sequel to Grab by the Ghoulies had it, actually sold. And then from there moved on to Viva Pinata, and then did Trouble in Paradise, and then, but Greg Mayles has never done a 3rd game except for Nuts and Bolts, and that wasn't even going to be a Banjo game at first. Like that was just kind of like, oh, I guess we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone here, bring back Banjo, but it was never going to be, we want to do a 3rd Banjo-Kazooie game, and we're gonna make it vehicle based. It was, we want to do this vehicle game, and what if we make this Banjo? So, I've of course gone back and forth on this because I've like, no, you gotta get Greg in there for a 3rd Banjo game, right? Like, he is the maestro, he is the mastermind behind Banjo-Kazooie. But I'm at the point where, look, if Greg Mayles doesn't want to do it, I don't want him to have to do it, because I think enough time has passed that we've got enough people in the industry now that grew up on Banjo-Kazooie, and more importantly, understand or can understand what makes Banjo-Kazooie, 1, so successful, and 2, so different from other franchises, that they like would know how to reverse engineer that and to build it into a new experience that would both honor what came before and take it in a new direction. And that's not to say I wouldn't want Greg to, not have some input if he has any to give. Absolutely, I would. But yeah, I also don't want to force him at gunpoint. Like I said when Sea of Thieves came out, that I don't want Rare to have to just be a sequel factory if they don't want to be that. If the creative talent behind that wants to do their own thing, if that was Sea of Thieves, then I want them to be able to do that. And it's worked out great for them with Sea of Thieves, but like, I'm at the point now where enough time has passed from that where I want somebody to do a Banjo-Kazooie game. and like, so I've gone like back and forth. Like I think as an episode I did with Shane Marchus back way back when, where it was a we need to talk about Banjo 3, where I said, I would want Rare to have a hand in it because I wouldn't want it to be a Killer Instinct 2013 situation where Rare has like very minimal insight into or oversight into this game because Banjo-Kazooie is Rare's baby. But enough time has passed where I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Just somebody fucking do it. I don't care.
Somebody make it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think about a series we talked about not too long ago, the Monkey Island series. My favorite game in that series, the creators had like very minimal input on my favorite one in that series. Just because different people make a game in a series, that doesn't mean it can't be great. It doesn't even mean it can't be the best in the series. Like, what if we get, like, I don't want to say this would definitely happen, but it's not out of the realm of possibility to have a totally different team come in and make the best Banjo-Kazooie game there's ever been.
Ever on any platform. I'm sorry. I have to do it every time. It's just get queued up and I'm like, oh, I have to say
it. Walked right into it.
Yeah, like I said, like enough people have entered the industry now. You see that with Super Mario Odyssey. There were some surprising Banjo-Kazooie influences in Super Mario Odyssey. Like we're at the point where Banjo-Kazooie is influencing Mario, which, begat Banjo-Kazooie. So it's, I think perfectly reasonable to say like you could hand it to a new team. And we'll touch upon this as we wind down the episode. Like the potential pratfalls that have to be overcome when doing this. But I'm at the point where I'm not so worried that if Greg doesn't want to do it, or if Rare doesn't want to do it, that it couldn't be done well.
Agreed.
So I just want it to be done, right? Like, but we'll touch more upon Banjo 3, I'm sure, as we continue to tick through these calls. Tick-tock clock. Am I right, Dustin?
Heyo, you were so right about that. Mario level 8.
No, ignore that. Tick through these calls. Ticker's Tower. Am I right, Dustin?
There we go. Now we're on to something.
Yeah, that wasn't miserable. All right, let's go. Third call.
Hey, this is DKRDS. The thing that I have to say most about Banjo-Kazooie is what Hyle said the other week, which was, should I get off the pot, Rare? I want more Banjo-Kazooie in my life. I'm over the onslaught of merchandise that they are just throwing in our face, and I want a new game. And I don't think that's crazy to think. And I recently replayed Banjo-Kazooie on Nintendo Switch, and it was freaking a beautiful delight. I just want more, and I don't think that's too much to ask. Am I just a 30-year-old millennial asking for more of my cartoon Banjo? Yeah, I am.
Wow. Surprisingly strong statement from DKRDS, who I wouldn't even think would care about Banjo. I thought you would care more about Dixie and Tiny Kong.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. As far as they're concerned, Banjo might not even exist.
Got you there. Ouch. All right. Well, like, I understand the frustration. I do. Like I said, I don't think we need to necessarily be looking to Rare. Like maybe for Rare to sign off on it. I think it's more Rare and Xbox Studios. If anybody's holding it up, like it's going to be a tandem thing. But to speak to the merchandise, because I alluded to this earlier, and I know this is a point of frustration for many fans out there. I've had people approach me and be like, I've had it with this Banjo-Kazooie merchandise when we have no games to show for it. And I can understand.
Yeah, Hyle, what were you thinking?
No, I can understand, like, when First Four Figures is like, oh, here's 5 Jinjo statues. And you're just like, dude, like, I can't anymore. Like we have a disgusting abundance of Banjo-Kazooie merchandise. Like it is a fantastic time for that, but without having games, I understand where that becomes cool and then a novelty to just like, okay, is this all this is? It's just a nostalgia factory to be mined for for plastic and porcelain and not anything like current. I do get the frustration there, but to that, I will just say that I don't think there's some evil conspiracy hatching at Rare for like, we're going to cash in on Banjo-Kazooie without giving them what they want. Mwahahaha. Like, there are stalwart fans of Rare and its legacy working at Rare, specifically those who make these merchandise deals. And it's not for any evil intent for them to sign off on these. It's because they are legitimately fans of Banjo-Kazooie. They might not have the power within Rare to say, hey, Craig Duncan, we really need to get cooking on something for Banjo-Kazooie. But they can definitely say, oh, Fangamer, you want to make these new Banjo-Kazooie products? Okay, we can work something out with you. Oh, first four figures? Oh, you twos?
Others?
Yeah, like, but it's nothing nefarious. It is, they are fans too, and they want to see it represented. And I realize how that feels, like going on 5 years now of all of this merchandise, but no new games, save for them appearing in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate and then Banjo-Kazooie resurfacing on Nintendo Switch. But like, I can't get angry at the merchandise department because they are doing their jobs wonderfully. Like, they're holding up their ends of the bargain. It's not on them. And I wouldn't want there to be no representation for Banjo-Kazooie in this awful drought.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I was talking to some friends about exactly this subject the other day. And, like, one, I'm okay with it because I'm so used to not getting merch for, like, any series I like. Like, just the luck of the draw. I just happen to like the series that just don't get anything. So, one, I'm very grateful that something I like is getting a lot of merch. But two, if the choice is no game, but lots of merch, or nothing at all, I think it's a pretty easy choice to make.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I get it. I get that it's frustrating having everything come out except for a new game, which is what you want. And I feel a little bad for it because I feel a little greedy if I, like, start being vocal about wanting a new Banjo game. Because I'm getting, like, all this merch, it's like, what, are you Banjo fans not satisfied enough? And it's like, well, so I get it. I do get the frustration of wanting a new game, but like I said, if having all this cool merchandise for Banjo-Kazooie, that it's not like we're getting this instead of a new game.
Yeah,
it's
and
that's or nothing.
That's the important thing. It's not like they're doing this to, like, I don't know. Like, I know people might have different perspectives on this, but like I said, there is not some master plan here when it comes to the Banjo-Kazooie merchandise. It's the people at Rare tasked with licensing deals, are doing what they're doing. And they're doing I think a great job of ticking off all these boxes for Rare's heritage in a way that Rare doesn't really do as a whole anymore. Like, they're doing deals for Diddy Kong Racing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the Rare Racer
awesome
stuff from Fangamer.
Yeah, it's crazy. I never would have thought we'd ever see something like that.
And I'm not going to turn up my nose at that. And I understand, like, if I was getting, like, 5 years of Bumper the Badger statues and just like every permutation of every Diddy Kong Racing element except for Diddy Kong Racing on NSO, then yeah, I'd be like, what the fuck? But yeah, again, we get the frustration, but I think it's a misplaced anger. I think the anger is just we have not gotten any new game for so long.
Yeah, the merch is great. It's great to be in a spot where you're a series that has lots of merch coming out.
Right.
That shouldn't be considered a bad thing. the frustration comes from not having a game to go with it.
Exactly, yeah. And I think once we would get that new game, then all of that would dissipate and be like, oh, wait a second. That pin from Fangamer is pretty cool. Oh, yeah, I should get that 2D U2's vinyl figure.
I should get the first 4-figure statue of Gloop the fish.
It is crazy to me, Dustin, that we now have more Banjo-Kazooie product than Donkey Kong product.
I was just thinking exactly the same thing. It's crazy seeing all this stuff from Fangamer, and maybe you'll get like a Donkey Kong figure here or there.
Yeah, it feels like we only get so far with Donkey Kong products. Like, outside of that toy line from 1999, we get like, oh, here's a Donkey Kong, and maybe you'll get a Diddy Kong. And if they're small enough scale, you'll get Dixie and Cranky, and stop. And then that's it.
Yeah, and what makes it really weird is First 4 Figures does like lots of other Nintendo series. Like, they have like Zelda statues, Metroid statues, Kirby statues, etc. But never a DK. Never any character from Donkey Kong.
If they had a King K. Rool or a Captain K. Rool statue.
Oh, man.
Oh, man, indeed. Well, but yeah, we have more Conquer merchandise these days than Donkey Kong. And
that's sobering.
And I think that's not a damnation of Rare. That's more of a what the fuck to Nintendo and their deal making. I think Rare, their merch team, flying colors right now. It's Nintendo I'm getting salty at. So, and we don't have a new Donkey Kong game to show for it either, but yeah, give me something, Nintendo. So yeah, it's not the merchandise so much. It's just the frustration that comes with having a wealth of product, but not having the software. I do get it. I do understand that.
Yeah, definitely.
But just know that the merchandise is always done with love and consideration for the most part. You know, there are some deals. There's some outlets out there that I've not been a fan of what they've churned out, but like I'm Fangamer and, you know, First 4 Figures. I think they've done a bang up job for the most part.
Quality products. Like, to this day, I wear my Banjo-Kazooie hoodie from Fangamer. Well, maybe not to this exact day because I'm boiling. I'm dying of heat in this apartment.
You're shirtless right now.
Yeah, I couldn't be wearing less Banjo-Kazooie stuff right now.
You're actually dressed like Banjo at the moment.
That's true. I should get my backpack and I'll be ready to star in a video game.
I think people are ready for it.
I gotta hold auditions for my sidekick. Who knows, Hyle? Maybe it could be you.
Oh, I don't want to be in a backpack. That sounds miserable.
Yeah.
All right, let's play our next call.
Gotcha.
Hey, DK Vine. It's John Tessier calling in for another episode of the Kongversation. So Banjo-Kazooie is 25 years old. It's crazy, and I can't believe it. Something I noticed while I was recently playing the game again on Nintendo Switch Online. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts about it. So at the end of Mario 64, the last action you take against the final boss is you swing Bowser around with his tail and you throw him into one of those bombs. And the last action you take for the final boss in Ocarina of Time is you stab the Master Sword right into Ganondorf's skull and you end it all. And with Banjo-Kazooie, the last action you take with the final boss is you just simply shoot an egg into the Ginginator. Now, I love the ending with the Ginginator. I think that's a terrific ending, how the Ginginator takes care of Grunty. It's great. However, playing it recently, and you get to, like, the final action you take before you beat the final boss, and it's like, oh, I just shot an egg. I didn't get to, like, punch Grunty in the face one last time. I didn't get to, like, Beak Buster or anything. Like, it feels so, like, you know, like, I shot an egg and now the game's done. I mean, I guess you collect the soft swap items after that, and there's other stuff to do, but really the last action of the game is just shooting an egg. And I wanted to know what you guys thought, if you guys think it's also kind of anticlimactic. I know the ending is great and I love it, but as the player, it does feel kind of weird. Anyway, can't wait to listen to the conversation. Hope you guys have a good one. Bye.
Thanks for the call, John Tessier. No, I do like the way the fight with Gruntilda ends, Dustin. I don't think it's a disappointment for me, because you do get some tactile hits on Gruntilda throughout the fight, right? Like you get to beak bomb her, you get to, you get to have the rough stuff, the rough and tumble fisticuffs. You get that satisfaction, but I really like this aspect of the conclusion of Banjo-Kazooie, where it's not Banjo and Kazooie necessarily. They facilitate it, but they don't land that killing blow on Gruntilda. It is the representative of the sort of indigenous people that she has displaced.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know what I think it comes down to for me is, I get where you're coming from, but I think just the fact that it is so, tricky near the end, like she's constantly firing those spells. You need to be really on your toes shooting them eggs into them Jinjo statues. So it's very adrenaline pumping, even if you're not necessarily landing like some big final blow on Gruntilda yourself. It feels like, well, I think part of it's fitting because Banjo and Kazooie are just a couple of losers going up against this all-powerful witch.
Right.
It totally makes sense that you're like scrambling the whole time. You're like, oh shit, I gotta watch out for all these spells. Oh fuck, I'm being attacked by this giant witch.
No. They are
It really
outmatched.
feels like... Yeah, exactly. It feels like you're really scrambling to make this happen.
And yeah, like Banjo-Kazooie were able to get this far, but it does feel like we're the Jinjonator not a factor. Had the Jinjos not interceded and given them this, like, basically super weapon of a character at their disposal, there would be no way they could defeat Gruntilda at this stage in their careers or hers, right? Like, eventually she would have worn them down and defeated them. And
yeah, she has her big shield.
Yeah. So like I said, I like that thematically this hapless group of characters, the Jinjos, that are frozen in place in each world and you have to rescue. Of course, Grunny's Revenge, we learn more about the backstory of they were the original inhabitants of Spiral Mountain and were driven out by Gruntilda, and there's all this pathos there, which makes the ending to Banjo-Kazooie all the more resonant to me, is that this group of people were the ones who really gave Gruntilda her most crushing defeat. I mean, literally with the boulder and everything, but like, this is the defeat that Gruntilda never really rebounded from. Just like Donkey Kong Country 2 was K. Rool's like biggest defeat, where he lost everything and it would be the state of ruin that he would never really claw his way out of. Gruntilda getting trapped under the boulder would just send her on this downward trajectory, right? Like,
yeah,
she's under this boulder for 2 years. She uses her powers to sustain her life force, but she becomes a skeleton, and then from there her skeletal form breaks apart and she becomes just a skull. And from there, so she's just constantly like on the defensive from this point on. And her stature as this big like warlord of Spiral Mountain, her own lair, this monster army at her disposal, like she basically loses all of that at this point. And I like that it's the Jinjos that, with the help of Banjo-Kazooie, but the Jinjos are really the ones who end her. Yeah,
definitely. I like that. That's something that sets them apart from a lot of other video game heroes, even Donkey Kong. Like, DK and Diddy go up against K. Rool. They take this guy out. They are considered heroes. Banjo and Kazooie, I think, are more forced into the hero role, and I don't think either one of them would consider themselves heroes up until this point. They're just a couple of people who were thrown into this battle with this powerful witch.
Yeah, like, the Banjo might be like, a weekend warrior, as you would say. Like, Banjo is not like Diddy Kong, who aspires to be a video game hero, like Donkey Kong, who is a family business for him. Banjo, like, knows Diddy, and Diddy asked for his help, so Banjo helped. And then Banjo, but, you know, it's never brought up, but I like to think that 2D wanted to go on an adventure with Banjo because 2D knows that Banjo went on this adventure on Timbers Island. And so now, like, Banjo's this big damn hero in her mind. And she's like, take me on an adventure, Banjo. And he's just this, like, lazy asshole who just wants to sleep in and not do anything. And then he's forced to actually be the hero that 2D sees him as. And, but yeah, it's, you know, the thing I love about the DKU over something like Mario is that the DKU, Banjo-Kazooie, the Kongs, there's always this sense of community over individual heroism. So,
yeah,
you know, the fact that most rare heroes come in a tandem, right? Like, you got Donkey and Diddy and Dixie and Kitty, Mario and Yoshi. All right, you know,
Mario and Yoshi.
Yeah, the weird John Lovitz. Mario and Yoshi. Oh, okay. But like, even then, even from like the heroes of the story, here, like, they're relying on the Jinjos who were once, like, indigenous to Spiral Mountain. Like, nobody goes at it alone in these games. Everybody relies on each other for the greater good. They
need the help of Bottles, like, Mumbo, like, it's a whole team.
Like, not to get into political philosophies here, but there's this great sense of just, like, collective well-being here. I'm not saying, like, Rare was, like, advocating for socialism, but, like, it is just, like, there is a village that has to come together to overcome the megalomania of these kings or these witchy warlords or these Nazi scientists or whatever the villain may be. And I think that's really cool. And so, like, I get what John's saying here. Like, oh, it would have been more satisfying to land the final blow on her. And of course, originally there was the whole thing where Grunty was going to turn you into a frog and you have to go through the whole thing again as 2D and basically, you know, the stuff that they like to do, you know, like Challenge 21 and Ghoulies, but I'm happy with it.
Yeah. Can I just say, I am so glad they did not do that extra 2D bit at the end. It's something that, like, when I first found out about it, I was like, oh, that's so cool. That would have been awesome. More Banjo to play, that would have been great. But the more I think about it recently, I'm like, I feel like that could have maybe not ruined the game, but would have ended it on a pretty sour note for me. Because you want to feel victorious after this big final battle. I feel like it would really deflate the game if after that you had to go through the worlds again. And I think the idea was you needed to collect, like, the Mumbo tokens you didn't collect. Like, all the remaining Mumbo tokens to reverse this spell. I can't imagine something worse than that to end Banjo-Kazooie on.
Yeah, and also 2D would have just learned from Banjo's stories that the way to reverse a frog spell is to run over him with a car.
Yeah, see, she could have saved a lot of time just doing that.
Or it's a different spell and 2D doesn't realize that and she just kills her brother.
Oh man, that's the alternate timeline story. The bad end. The hero falls.
The hero squished.
This leads to 2D 64, onward and onward.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for the call, John. Let's go ahead.
Thank you.
And play our next call. And our next call looks like they hit the limit. It looks like it went right up to the 3-minute line. So I don't know if they got to say everything they wanted to say. We'll find out.
Well, DK Vine. I've been listening for a few years, but this is my first time calling, which of course means it's my first time subjecting you all to my terrible voice. You're welcome. So, Banjo-Kazooie. I never played this game when it first came out, mostly because I didn't exist. I'm what you might call a zoomer. I grew up during the Wii era. Mario Galaxy was to me what Banjo-Kazooie was to you. But I still knew of this game, right? I knew it was one of those ancient Nintendo games that came out back during the bygone era of the mid to late 90s, before medicine was invented and when dinosaurs roamed the earth, right? But all the YouTubers back in the day, they would just rave and rave about Banjo-Kazooie, so I obviously knew what it was. But I was never really interested in it until that fateful day in the year of our Lord, 2019, when Banjo and Kazooie made a guest appearance in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And I was happy, right? I hadn't even played the game, but I was happy because I always thought they were funny-looking characters, and I understood that they meant a lot to a lot of people. But that was the push I needed to actually give the game a shot. And I gotta say, I really, really enjoy it, right? Like, I'm just a really big fan. I think it's charming. I think it's fun. I think it's got a lot of similarities to something like Super Mario Odyssey, which is one of my favorite games of all time. Like, it's got a lot of modern sensibility for such an old game. An old game that's old and gray and faded because it's so old. The 90s were so old. Anyway, Banjo-Kazooie really does mean a lot to me now that I think about it. Like, in recent years, it's come to mean a lot to me. Like, last year, January 2022, 2 games were coming out on Switch within the same week, right? Like, Pokemon's big new 3D open world reinvention of itself. And that meant equally as much to me. I was equally as excited for that as I was for this 50-year-old N64 game to come on NSO. You know? So, I just think it's very interesting that a zoomer like myself could find so much enjoyment out of this game. Because a lot of my fellow Gen Zers don't have much respect or reverence for the bear and bird, right? Like, they just kind of don't care, which makes sense. They don't know what a banjo is. They've never seen them before. So I'm kind of the odd man out because I really do love them. Kazooie is like my favorite, one of my favorite female gaming characters ever. I really hope they'll come back one day. I don't know in what form. If Crash can do it, if Spyro can do it, if goddamn Bubsy the Bobcat can do it, I think Banjo could do it. You know, but we'll see. All right, whatever happens, happens. I'm just happy that we did get the few games we did get, because especially the first one, I think it's really, really great. So yeah, that's my call. That's my...
Oh, well, they were wrapping up right when they hit the limits. I was about to say that was well done. I thought that was going to pull out, but still got cut off.
Just barely missed it.
Yeah, but for one thing, stop being so hard on yourself, callers. First-time callers. It's like, oh, I'm subjecting yourself to my terrible voice. I am sick right now. I have been coughing off mic. I have been sneezing. I sound like death warmed over. So nobody has any room to talk about having a terrible voice if I'm not at the front of that line. So everybody needs to just be kind to themselves. All right. You're all great. You're all great. We're all family here. I will not have anybody shit talking themselves on my watch. 2, case in point, we have a certified Zoomer calling in, talking about how much they love Banjo-Kazooie.
It's great. Love to see it. I love seeing that a game like this still holds up in modern day.
Yeah, that was the point we were making. I guess I didn't have a thesis going into this episode. If I had to say I did have one, it would be that. It would be like, hey, still pretty good. It's not just nostalgia talking.
Yeah, I guess you could say this is why Banjo-Kazooie still matters.
Yeah, our point from, 5 years ago. But,
yeah, it still matters.
Still matters, still matters, etc. But yeah, I mean, that's why I really do feel like if we would get a new game, and I don't even think it has to be a remaster or anything, if we just get a new Banjo-Kazooie game, we would be set in stone, right? Like, I think that it would just do the trick. If their appearance in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate got our caller here invested, then just imagine what a new game could do. You know, going Definitely. Off, like riding off of that Smash Brothers appearance, because that's still relatively recent, relatively relevant, right? So getting us a new Banjo-Kazooie game would just, I think, really invest any Zoomers or younger who haven't been converted. It could do the trick.
Totally, and the only way to find out is to do it, so...
Yeah, because it is more relevant than Bubsy, right? Like,
and Bubsy got a couple new games.
I'm not crazy, right? Like, Banjo-Kazooie has more respect than that, as far as, like...
Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing with Bubsy is the only reason it got new games is because it's so notoriously hated and bad. So they were writing off that negative publicity.
So wait a second. So you can get new games if you're universally reviled?
I guess so. That's the only reason Bubsy came back.
Shit. Like, why can't we still be in the early aughts then when everybody hated Rare's games all of a sudden?
Yeah, maybe we'd be seeing a brand new one right about now.
We'd be seeing, like, when's our new Grab by the Ghoulies game out then? People hate Grab by the Ghoulies. I mean, it's a brilliant
That means
game.
We're guaranteed another one.
Yeah, alright. Thank you for the call. And again, you did great. Why is everybody so hard on themselves?
Yeah, call in more if you want. We love hearing you.
You're fantastic. All right. Here's our next caller. I'm sure they'll be great too.
Hey, Hyle. Hello, guest. This is Traveler of the Stars here. I hope the both of you are doing as amazing as you guys look today on this fine day. So I'm just calling about Banjo-Kazooie. Happy birthday to it. Yeah, I'll make this really quick. I did not grow up with Banjo-Kazooie. My first Nintendo consoles, or consoles in general, were the Wii and the DS. So Banjo-Kazooie was a complete, I didn't know anything about it. I think when I first heard about it would probably be Smash speculation and hope, back in Smash 4 days, and hearing more about that. And, when the replay got announced, my brother had an Xbox One, and I asked for that game for it, and that was the only game I ever asked for it. And, I played Banjo-Kazooie. Still haven't gotten around to Tooie. And as someone who grew up weaned on the Mario series and its 3D platformers, I was really taken aback by Banjo-Kazooie, and even though it was an older game, it holds up remarkably well. And it has so much personality, and, I don't want to get into a whole thing about the developers or opinions, or their people's opinions on there not being an audience for a new Banjo game. But I think that's a real shame that, some people think that, because I think Banjo-Kazooie has this special spark and kind of irreverent humor and personalities that really help make it stand out from the 3D platforming genre as a whole, which, might as well be mostly Mario. Unfortunately, there's not a wide variety. I know there are some making a resurgence, but it's really great that, Banjo got into Smash, that many people supported Banjo, and I was really happy for everyone else, and I just really hope he got in for everyone. But yeah, I guess I just want to say that even though I was a very, very, very young Banjo fan, I suppose, on the grand scheme of things, I really respect the series, and I really do hope that someday a new game will come out, made by another studio, or just somehow. I would love to see a new game. I think the series really deserves it. The music, the visuals, the characters. I just hope they all, I hope they come back, because it's a really great and special series. My favorite music, by the way, from the game is probably the pause music from the first game and Click Clockwood Spring. Anyway, looking forward to hearing you guys talk about this. See you guys later.
Well, thank you for the call, Traveler of the Stars. Yeah, we look great. Dustin looks great because Dustin's shirtless.
Oh, thank you for noticing, Hyle. You look great too, even though you have a cold. I think it actually gives you more of a glow.
Yeah, so like I have loosely defined abs on like any given day, but because I've been coughing so much, my abs are rock hard right now. Because I have been like wheezing and just harking up so much phlegm that it's giving me the total body workout. It's amazing. I recommend this regimen for anyone who wants to have a killer beach bod this summer.
I might need to take you up on that because I don't have pecs. I just have man boobs. But, I'm comfortable enough with them to not wear a shirt.
Dustin, you're all beautiful to me. Like you.
Oh, thank you.
Gotta be proud of your body. But, if you want, I can spit in your drink and you can catch what I have. And it's up to you.
You'd do that for me? Thanks, Hyle.
So yeah, Traveler is another baby. I didn't realize. I didn't realize Traveler of the Stars was another Wii baby.
This is great. I especially like hearing from the younger people, since a lot of people in our age group and our group of friends, we know their feelings on Banjo-Kazooie. I like hearing from the younger audience. What's funny is I used to work a job I hated a long time ago. And I had a coworker who was born after 1998, and I was just flabbergasted. Like, obviously, people were born after 1998, but it was the first. It just hit me right there. I just had never thought about it before. That like this person right in front of me was not even a concept when one of my favorite things to ever exist came out.
Yeah, I for me, it wasn't that. It was when I first realized I was talking to somebody who was born after 9/11, because I was like, yeah, how about that 9/11? And they were like, what?
What? Every year has 9/11s.
So, yeah, but I think Traveler hit upon the same points we've been hitting upon, that there is this relevancy, this everlasting relevancy to Banjo-Kazooie, and that all it needs is a chance to thrive again. Like, the work is done. It doesn't have this huge threshold, this enormous ladder to climb to regain its prominence. All it needs is a new game, particularly because the Kingmaker, Smash Brothers, has already spoken, has already deemed it worthy of said new game. Once Smash Brothers says, hey, you matter, then you're as good as gold from then on.
Yeah, after Smash Melee, we started getting the Fire Emblem games, and I feel like with K. Rool in Banjo-Kazooie in Smash Ultimate, that's already a huge audience of people who know who these characters are and who will look at a new game with them and be like, oh, even if they hadn't played like the original games these characters are from, they could be like, oh, I know them. They're in Super Smash Brothers. I love Super Smash Brothers. I will play this.
It's a ground floor for anyone. Like, you don't need that first game. Like, you don't need to start with Donkey Kong 1981 or Mario Brothers or Super Mario Brothers to know who Mario is, or to just pick up a Mario game. And I think Super Smash Brothers gives people that invitation in their minds to be like, oh, well, I've played as these characters in Super Smash Brothers, so I'm going to follow them into this.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's something that's kind of missing in Ultimate, just because you don't have the trophies. Like, I think the Spirit should have had, like, some little description to let you know, like, okay, so this is where K. Rool came from. This is what Banjo and Kazooie are all about. It makes it even easier for them to be like, okay, I know them. I can go into whatever comes out with them going forward.
Then again, like, I feel like the trophies in Melee were one thing. They were all pretty much well done. Brawl is the one that had the wild inconsistencies, like, in facts, like, oh, Captain K. Rool is King K. Rool's brother. So what the fuck? And then, the ones in Super Smash Bros. 4 were so weirdly thirsty. It was like, the one about Crystal. It's like, oh, we know Crystal uses her telepathy to please Fox in bed. It's like, what?
Wow.
Where's this coming from? So
I will say I like those more than just like full on inadequacies like the Captain K. Rool thing. Like, the ones in Smash 4 were at least having fun with it, and so I'll take that over just being completely flat out wrong.
Yeah, but the ones in PAL territories got better descriptions than the ones we got here in the the Americas. Like the ones for the Donkey Kong Barrel Blast / Jet Race characters were so much better than the ones we got.
Yeah, definitely. I like the one that says like maybe in a different life, K. Rool could have been one of Donkey Kong's animal buddies. And I'm like thinking, Donkey Kong riding on K. Rool's back seems very unright.
Yeah, what do you think animal buddies are? Like,
yeah, I guess sometimes they're just animals you have in the background of a stage.
But like, K. Rool is this monarch who uses a gun and wears jackets and sails ships and like creates robots. Like Rambi is a rhino who shits in the bushes.
Yeah, you're equating K. Rool to an animal to be ridden on.
Anyway, but yeah, Smash has I think given Banjo and Kazooie an enormous grace period. Like, I think Xbox Studios needs to strike sooner better than later, but I think Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, for as long as that is the preeminent Smash game, I think Banjo and Kazooie have a bit of a safe space where they don't need to go to great lengths to recapture the audience, right? Like I've seen a lot of pieces, and I've not seen the new Indiana Jones movie, and so I won't be spoiling anything. I do intend to see it at one point or another, but I've seen a lot of think pieces about why the fifth Indiana Jones movie, the TikTok of Destiny, that
Indiana Jones and the TikTok clock,
yeah, and the click clock would. Why it's underperforming at the box office. And one of the things I've seen is just, Zoomers just don't care about Indiana Jones. It's, there's been too wide of a gulf between entries, and there therefore is no entry point into this weird movie with an aged Harrison Ford running around. Like there's no like, oh yeah, I love Indiana Jones, let's go see the new Indiana Jones. It's, this is a franchise for old people. Pass. And I don't know how true or not that is, but I can see the fear that some older Banjo-Kazooie fans would have that would be the reaction to Banjo-Kazooie. But I think Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, once they got into that, and things like it being on NSO, and the quality just holding up, it being so readily accessible to gamers, which is a little bit different than, say, a movie from the 1980s, like getting people to watch a movie from the 1980s that hasn't had many entries. I think gamers are wired a little bit differently, and if it's readily available and they have an interest in older games and they've heard good things, they will try it and, oh shit, this still holds up. I really like these characters. Oh my god, Kazooie just made a reference to anally inserting that key into Mumbo Jumbo's rectum. This is awesome.
This is great. Finally, a series for me.
This is exactly what I look for in my entertainment. So I think like that fear that maybe, Indiana Jones is passe wouldn't apply to Banjo-Kazooie. So
yeah, I think part of it is just being more interactive. Like, you're just going to get, anyone from any period can get something out of an interactive experience like Banjo-Kazooie. And I could see modern audiences like not wanting to go back and watch old Indiana Jones movies, because that's like, I like those movies, but if you're sitting down and watching it, that's what you're going to get. You're probably not going to get, if you don't like it, you're not going to like it. But I think with a game, there's so many different things you could possibly enjoy. Like, you could enjoy how it plays. You could enjoy its world and characters. There's just more to it that can sink its, horrible fangs into your shoulder.
That's right. And hey, look, some of the things in the Indiana Jones movies haven't aged well, but you got him punching Nazis. You got him in a runaway minecart with his baseball cap sidekick. You've got a lot of great shit in there, so they're worth checking out. Just kind of like nod your head and grit your teeth during the monkey brain scene. I don't know what Spielberg was thinking either. They're vegetarians. They wouldn't eat monkey brains or live eels. That's nonsense. But besides that, they're fun movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for the call, Traveler of the Stars.
Thank you.
We got 3 more calls, Dustin.
It's been a lot of calls, but I've been loving hearing all of them.
This isn't a call sack episode, but our sack overfloweth.
Our sack runneth over.
Let's play number 7.
Hey, Kongversation! What's going on?
God.
It's Angry Ancestor. I'm here for my annual call, and we're celebrating, right? We're celebrating. There's a big anniversary. It's my 8th year at DK Vine. 8 years of calling into the Kongversation. Can you guys believe it? I'm so humbled that you guys would have a whole episode about my 8-year anniversary. DK Vine and the Kongversation has been a constant in my life, the past 8 years. They've been tough. I've had some ups. I've had some downs. You know what I'm saying. But, what's that? Yeah, I'm calling into the Kongversation. What's up? Oh, that's embarrassing. Okay. Hey guys, you still with me? Yeah, that's so, turns out I got my anniversaries mixed up. You're not doing an episode about me. Maybe next year. I get it. Banjo-Kazooie, right. Of course, yeah. 25 years. Let's see. Great game. My best friend of 20 years, we met in 2nd grade and bonded over our love for Banjo-Kazooie. Game holds a very special place in my heart. See, I'm coming up with things on the fly here. What you guys have any similar anecdotes like that where, someone who's otherwise not involved in the gaming sphere turns out to have this, mutual love for Banjo-Kazooie like you do? Any sort of encounters in the wild with this game? I don't know. I don't fucking know.
Well, Angry Ancestor, aside from you scaring the dickens out of me at the top of your call, happy 8th anniversary for you, DK Vine.
Happy 8th anniversary.
It's worthy celebrating. What happened 8 years before the first Indiana Jones movie? Watergate!
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
it's the Watergate anniversary.
So that's how long it's been.
I'm glad we're not doing an episode on Angry Ancestors anniversary. Happy anniversary, but I'm glad that's not our subject because I forgot to get them a gift.
Yeah, I know. That's why they're so angry all the time.
Right, and I get it. I think they're totally justified in being an angry ancestor.
If you want to get a gift, Dustin, there is a wide selection of Banjo-Kazooie merchandise available at fine online vendors such as Fangamer and, first 4 figures, that might be a little bit pricey. That might be a little bit out of your budget. But,
Right. But you know what is in my budget?
What?
A wonderful Shabunga shirt from the DK Vine store.
Shabunga roll call. So, that's a Jeff joke. But, yeah, Angry Ancestor was looking for the, anecdotes about Banjo-Kazooie, I guess, encounters in the wild. I don't know, that sounds like a Penthouse Letters kind of thing. I never thought it would happen to me. That's an old joke. That's an old boomer joke. Ignore me. I think that, it's the joke they would make, like, around the time of Watergate.
Whoa. It just keeps coming back. You're so good at this.
So this isn't a personal encounter, but I think it's worth mentioning here on the 25 years of Banjo-Kazooie episode. Nick Offerman, beloved actor, mustachioed, debonair workshopsman, woodcrafter, stereotypical vision of the, red-blooded American male, right? Like,
right.
Nick Offerman, who you may know from Parks and Recreation, among other things, but just known as being like the woodsman, the lumberjack, just the, what you think of when you think of, like, the classic stereotypical all-American male. And he said that because he was on the Last of Us show, he did a stint on that, and of course that's an adaptation of the video game. And he was on one of the late night talk shows. It might have been the Jimmy Kimmel, it might have been the Jimmy Fallon from off of Donkey Kong Country Returns promotional fame. But he was asked, "Hey, you're on this show that's adapted from a video game, but we associate you with the wood shop, right? Like video games, you and video games, that seems like a stretch. You're not a nerdy gamer, man. Have you ever played a video game?"
Do you know what a video game is?
And he said, actually, as a matter of fact, I have played a video game, and I became so obsessed with it, it consumed all aspects of my life for a couple of weeks until I beat it. And I realized, had I continued to go down this route, I'm paraphrasing, by the way, this is like not what he said verbatim, but this is the gist of it. If I continued down this route, I would not accomplish anything. And that one game he played, and he realized he could not continue being a gamer, for it would just be an all-consuming passion, was Banjo-Kazooie.
Of all the games it could have been, I think that's like the only mainstream time I've heard like anyone bring up Banjo-Kazooie, and it was just cool and fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think these days you're more likely to hear people like reference it, just like you would like Donkey Kong Country or Diddy Kong Racing. Like it's not as like insane a proposition as it would have been when Banjo-Kazooie was new. But yeah, it's still like, out of all the people to bring it up, like Nick Offerman, this is not part of his personality or the personality that he presents as his personality. So, and Nick Offerman is a cool guy. Like he's, like I said, like he's the stereotypical, like, America man, but he's actually a really, like, he seems by all appearance to be an awesome dude. So, but yeah, like I was just like, that's awesome that he looked at what his life could be if he continued being a fan of Banjo-Kazooie. And he was,
yeah, you might be talking to him on this podcast instead.
Right? Like Nick Offerman would be a DK Vine staffer. Could you imagine?
Imagine if Banjo-Kazooie had such an effect on his life that instead of becoming an actor, he decided to dedicate himself to playing DKU games, and to this day posts on the forum, is on the Kongversation regularly.
Yeah, he was on the Kongversation mini with me about Donkey Kong Gladiator instead of Cameron. He's just like,
he's super excited about this small bit of Donkey Kong we get to have.
Like, I can't do a Nick Offerman. It would be something to the effect of, I'm confounded by why they put Donkey Kong in this gladiatorial gear. And he throws his phone in the garbage.
That'd be great. Oh, I love this future that never came to be.
Freezer said he's like a successful version of you. Thanks, Freezer.
Freezer always has such a way with words. I get to experience them every week in the Idaho Crew streams.
Yeah. Sad thing is, like, I have an Emmy.
That's more than I can say.
This is what I'm doing with it. Yeah, sometimes I just have to remind myself, oh yeah, I did win it. But no,
instead you're here talking about Banjo-Kazooie. And to be fair, I would not have it any other way.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to have Nick Offerman's life working with wood. I would get splinters.
Yeah, ew. That would hurt.
Gets under your skin. When you were a kid, did you ever like have people tell you, oh, you need to get that splinter out because it could bury itself deep inside of you, enter your bloodstream, go to your heart, and kill you?
Yes.
Yeah, like it terrified the shit out of me. I'd be like, oh, I have a splinter. I only have seconds to live.
Get me an ambulance. We got to get this taken care of right now.
Yeah, that's not the life for me. No, thank you. I like it where I'm at.
Mom, drop the cookie dough bowl.
What?
Like mom's inside making cookies and you're like, you gotta drop everything and handle this situation now.
Well, hold on. I didn't know I was going to get cookies. Let me rethink this.
Hold on now. Maybe this splinter can wait a little bit.
All right, we've got another caller, another one that hit the precious 3-minute mark. So we'll see how much they got in before they got cut off.
Happy 25th birthday, anniversary, Banjo-Kazooie. This is Ray Day Pinball here. I had to call in because it's the 25th anniversary of my favorite game of all time. Well, Banjo-Tooie, pretty darn good. But Banjo-Kazooie started it all, so it's up there. And Diddy Kong Racing was the game that actually, started everything, so that one's up there too. Anyway, don't need to digress. This is Banjo's Day, and I normally have some sort of insightful question or something, but I just wanted to call in and just say how much Banjo means to me and kind of give some anecdotes from my childhood, from, when I was 5 years old and I got that, or maybe 6 years old, and I got that game, and I put it in, and I didn't even know how to read. So I had to have my dad read all the character text to me. And that was just like a really cool, bonding moment, dad and son playing Banjo together. It's a single player game, but for us it was multiplayer. We played it together because he was the one reading all the text. And I remember one time dad wasn't there and I stumbled upon Clanker for the first time. And oh my God, I turned off the game. I was scared to death of this giant shark thing. I thought I stumbled into something I shouldn't have. I was terrified. So I wonder how many people have that same first reaction to meeting Clanker for the first time. Yeah, it was a funny moment. There was also, I remember when I first beat Grunty's Furnace Fun, I was on that last death square, and I actually paused the game and I called my dad when he was at work. And I said, "Hey Dad, can I finish the game? I know you're at work. We usually play Banjo together, but I wanna, I'm on the last square." And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And so I got it right, thankfully, and didn't go into the lava pit. And I got to see that epic credits sequence for the first time. And every time I beat Banjo, I always I don't think I have a choice really, but I let the credits play and I just savor them because it's so good. It's just such a satisfying ending. God, the game is so good. It's just so good. It's just so good. All three versions, Switch, N64, Xbox, I rotate through them, just one at a time. And, man, I remember, once I, was in middle school and high school and I started using the internet, I ran into the Rare Witch Project forums. I was on there. My username was the guy over there. And, that kind of got me reinvigorated and I played Banjo some more. And then in high school, college, more Banjo. And now I'm 30 years old, and I still have Banjo currently in my living room. All three consoles. It's just...
Well, thank you for the call, Ray Day Pinball.
I really want to know what it was just.
I think we're just gonna have to fill in the blanks. But just for the point, because you're kind of like waffling back and forth, like anniversary, birthday, it's both. It's both. So the confusion lies in if this was like a numbered event, like Super Bowl 1, Super Bowl 2. Super Bowl 2 would be the first anniversary of the Super Bowl. So that's where it would get confusing, right?
Right.
But since we haven't had an annual Banjo-Kazooie game ever, then there's no confusion here. 25 means 25. It's all good.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think I agree with what you're spitting out, Hyle.
You talked a little bit about the credits, those credits that we would get after Grunty's Furnace Fun, and then you get more credits after defeating Grunty at the top of her tower. And yeah, they're really fun. I just really like the way, again, they celebrate the characters of the game. All of these weirdo, not just like the enemies you encounter, but just all these weirdo NPCs, these idiots who just needed all the help they could get. and it just gave you their name. If you didn't learn it through dialogue, here is their name. And that's like where I first learned the name Sir Slush for this evil snowman. And I was like, Sir Slush! I just love the way that sounds. That's poetry, man. That is poetry. So like, and I was like, that was like a week or two before I got back online, right? And so like, I was like, as soon as I get online, cause it's like, what's your email gonna be? What's your email gonna be? There was that Jeff Goldblum commercial from the late 90s for I think like IMAX. And he was like, everybody's asking, what's your email? It's like, email? I don't have email. What's my email? And, so like, that was something you had to think of, like, what is my, email? Like, it wasn't even like online handle or like, username or before any of that became in vogue. It was just like, what's my email gonna be? And I knew I was like, that was it. It was like, I wanted it to tie into what was like my most vibrant fandom, which was then the DKU. I don't even think I called it the DKU, until like a year later when I was like formulating the ideas of DK Vine. But like, it just like, cause at first I just called it like the Donkey Kong games with good graphics. And then, from there, like Banjo-Kazooie is where I really had to start to reassess that. But, I wanted it to tie into that, and yeah, I'm not like an ice dude. Like I'm not about like the snow worlds. Like winter is not my favorite season. I'm not somebody who's like Christmas in July. I like verdant greenery, right? But
right.
I don't dislike winter or autumn. Click Clock Wood taught me to embrace all 4 seasons, but for whatever reason, that the name of that snowman in those credits, it was just like, that's it. I want to be Sir Slush at AOL.com.
What a hell of a drone, a Banjo-Kazooie enemy to stick out. Like, I guess there's nothing that makes him any worse or better than any of the other ones, but like, no matter who you could have picked in that group, I would say, what a strange one to pull out.
Yeah, and what's even stranger is Sir Slush at AOL was already taken, and I had to go with Sir Slush 2. I had to be the second Sir Slush on America Online.
I'm imagining myself making my first email and saying, you know what? I'm gonna be Grabba 2.
King Sandy Butt 4.
Scabby, the scarab.
Oh man, you know what Banjo-Kazooie character I really like? Scabby.
Which
just could you imagine?
You just take one look at Scabby and you think there's the star of their next game.
Because it's funny, because Buzz Bombs have had a mild renaissance for the first time ever because of Smash, right? Buzz Bombs,
which is that's so weird. They're not even in Spiral Mountain, but they decided, you know what? Buzz Bombs, those are the guys we're gonna put in our Smash Brothers level.
It's because of the opening. It's because they're the very first thing you see in the opening to the game when they hit the Rare logo.
Right.
But,
that's right. You know what? That gives them a little bit of a boost, I guess.
But nobody gave a shit about Buzz Bombs until Smash said, like, oh yeah, we're gonna put it in the background, we're gonna make them a spirit. And now Buzz Bombs are like one of the most prominent banjo baddies. So, Scabbas, your time may come yet.
Yeah, you might have to wait a little longer, but your time will come.
No, and the Clanker, anecdote really did, resonate with me, because I didn't have, of course, that exact experience, and I knew Clanker was coming, but because I read Nintendo Power, but I can totally relate with, I stumbled upon something in this game that is absurdly out of the norm from what I was expecting. Do I need to just shut this game off? Did I break the boundaries? Did I go through this hellmouth? Am I experiencing something that is forbidden and arcane? And that, I've mentioned my weirdest, phobia when it comes to games is boundary breaking, right? Like seeing something that I'm not supposed to see, like something that defies the reality of the game itself. For me, just talking about recently here on the conversation, my preferences when it comes to game environments and how Super Mario Brothers 3 always felt upsetting to me, and I never knew why. Why was this game depressing me? Super Mario Brothers 3? Am I crazy? And it's because it's presented as a stage play. There is this persistent level of artifice, and that was unsettling. It was kind of like Uncanny Valley to me, except for the environments. And my brain was picking up on, this isn't real. This isn't right. This isn't natural. Super Mario Brothers 3, mind you. So,
right.
So when I like have that to the umpteenth degree where I am boundary breaking, or where I'm like going someplace where I'm not certain I'm supposed to be. Is this part of the developer's intent, or did I just completely like shatter reality? That is like, that is just like, ugh, I get the chills. I get the hive rustles from it. And yeah, I could see like going to this like hell beast Clanker, who is a perfectly friendly gentleman once you get to know him, but just seeing him there, especially if you played this with a parental figure, and then all of a sudden, bam, monster whale facing you. I could definitely see that to be upsetting, for sure.
Yeah, that's very interesting, that story about really not liking breaking out of bounds and stuff, because I feel like I'm kind of a similar way. Not exactly that specifically, because like if I do something that breaks out of bounds, then it's just like, oh, okay, well, that was a mistake. That's not something I like ever set out to do. But I know people who like go out of their way to find like the glitches in games. And that's just like so far away from the way I am. I remember, and this is totally not a slight at them. It's just totally different from how I like to play games. We were playing DK64 for one of our Idaho Cruise streams, and the other Idaho boys were trying to pull off some glitches in it, to some warps. It's been a while. I don't remember exactly what they were doing, but they were trying to warp ahead, because you can just tear through that game like tissue paper. And I'm sitting here like, well, I get it. I get the fun of trying to tear through this game, but if I want to play through it, I just want to play through it the way I'm supposed to. I want to get what I'm supposed to be experiencing out of this game. And like, if I was just like turning it on to goof around, then that would be one thing. If I had just booted up to specifically to be like, oh, let's see if I can pull off this glitch. Oh, I did. That was fun. But if I'm wanting to go through the whole game, I want to do it the way it's supposed to be done. I don't want to like skip half the game.
No, definitely. I am completely with you there. I think
Banjo... Yeah, and that's just the way I like to play. I don't want to slag off people who like playing it that way. That's totally valid if that's the way you like to do it. As well.
No, for sure. It's all a matter of preference and what you go into video games expecting to get out of it. But for me, like, Banjo-Kazooie was, I think, the first game that really made me feel like it was okay to start going off the beaten path a little bit, to start pushing back against the boundaries just a little bit, because it felt like that ending with the stop and swap items. Before we knew what stop and swap was, we just, here's 2 question mark eggs and an ice key. And you know, like there's these rooms beyond what you can reach, what you can see in the worlds of Treasure Trove Cove, Freeze's Peak, and Gobi's Valley. And then there's all this other ancillary stuff that you thought might tie into it, like, oh, there's these doors in the transformation room in Grunny's lair, there's this big lava chamber just, outside Mad Monster Mansion, like, oh, yeah, and you start, like, connecting dots that aren't supposed to be connected because there's no connection actually at all, but it really did make you feel like, okay, I'm gonna try these things. And especially if you're doing it with a friend, then you feel like you're a little bit emboldened in the game, saying, no, we want you to do this.
Yeah, I think that's the big difference, is when the game wants you to do it. Like, if it's something like the stop and swap rooms, that's something that's put in the game for you to explore. It's not the same as like exploiting the game or anything.
And when like people were exploiting it with Game Shark and like moon jumping over the ice key wall, and I was just like, no, That's not what Rare wants. What are you doing? And then when the stop and swap, the sandcastle codes came out, I was like, no, we don't know if that's the right way to do it. Yeah. And the phobia resurfaced then. And I only just did it on the N64 version thanks to Nintendo Switch Online and having to you could have save states between unlocking the stop and swap items and still have a save state before, so like you can jump back to having the items in place. The first time you could do that on the N64 because it's a one-time use on every cartridge. So
yeah. And for me, I feel like for me personally, Game Shark codes, that would have been too much. That's not the intent for how to get them. But for me, I remember thinking, okay, these cheat codes are here to get these items. If they're there in the game, that means they're fair game for me. So I put in the codes and just got them right away. It's like, these codes are so long, you earned getting these items.
God, they're a pain in the ass, especially when you screw up something and you don't realize it until you get to the end and you're like, ugh.
It's kind of how I feel about the Cheeto cheat codes too. Like, normally I would be so against using cheat codes, but I think if they are there for you to get, then they're fair game. Like, I would never use the ones that are like, oh, open this door up early. Get this move before you're supposed to. That stuff I don't like doing. But if it's rewarding you with cheats, then it's totally fair game.
For me, Cheeto was completely fine because it was in the game. It was presented as, here's this character in the game. And giving you this, for me, it just felt like a natural part of it versus here's something that this magazine says you can do if you put in this code, on the menu. And it's just, no.
Yeah, I feel like next time I play Banjo-Tooie, usually I play it without the Cheeto cheats on, because I'm like, I don't need cheats. I can tear through this game even without cheats. But I think next time I play it, I might just reap the rewards. Like, if I get the Cheeto pages to get these cheats to have, like, turn off fall damage or whatever, I'm gonna use them. I earned those cheats.
Well, and also, I just like talking to Cheeto. He's a lonely boy.
Yeah, I love Cheeto.
All right. Well, are you ready to take the final call?
Oh, I'm waiting with bated breath.
Oh, okay. Well, so long as it's not masturbated breath like Boggy over there.
Well, we'll see.
Ew.
Hello, Hyle and Dustin. This is Scooter. I'm a long-time listener, reasonably long-time patron, second-time caller. The first time I called was also about a Banjo-Kazooie episode when they got into Smash. I still consider Banjo-Kazooie to be my favorite video game. It's wild that we are at the 25th anniversary of their first game. I'm sitting here at my desk surrounded by my various plushes, Banjo-Kazooie, all the Jinjos and the Jinjonator, wearing my Spiral Mountain hiking shirt and admiring my Banjo and Kazooie amiibo, reminiscing about how much this series means to me. I'm sure you've already discussed this, but in case you didn't, here's a question. Do you think there's still a chance of us seeing a new Banjo-Kazooie game in the future? What kind of game would you want it to be? I initially thought that I'm kind of torn between wanting another adventure collectathon, like Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, just like a real Banjo 3. But I'm torn between that and wanting something new and innovative, something that takes the series in a different direction. I think I would probably want something new, as long as it maintains the same endearing charm that the series has. I just don't know what kind of new game I would want, but what are your thoughts?
We get thrown the hard call for the last, Dustin.
Ooh. So this is an interesting one because I have had an idea for what I would do with a new Banjo game for a long time, but I don't think I've ever heard what you would do for a new one.
Well, first of all, Scooter's question about do we think there's a chance we'll see one? Of course.
Yeah, it has to happen sooner or later.
I would say that if Phil Spencer, Craig Duncan, whoever, has to sign off on this, if they all just collectively say no, that would be a bad idea, then they're out of their minds. Like, I think the market is there. I think if they hit right, then it can be a huge success. And I don't think they should look at Rare's misfortunes on the Xbox and the Xbox 360, their underperforming games there, and say, well, it wouldn't work. Because enough time has passed, the Xbox platform has changed, the audience has grown, has diversified, evolved. And I think it's the right time to do it. Not that, like, 5 years ago wasn't a good time to do it too, but I think now is an even better time. But also time is a ticking. We're in that penultimate Super Mario 64 world that people hate. And, you gotta do it sooner, rather than later. But I do think eventually, of course, we will see a new Banjo-Kazooie game. But, well, Dustin, what's your idea? Because you said you've talked about it. I can't recall what it is.
Okay, so mine wouldn't be like, some revolutionary new game idea. My idea was simply something that could give a new Banjo-Kazooie game a twist without, like, totally changing what it is. And so my idea was I would bring their instruments into it. Not the most creative idea in the world, but I feel like a lot of modern promotional material for Banjo-Kazooie has them with their instruments, but they've, like, never been a factor in the gameplay. I feel like you could have, like, Mumbo come in, enchant their instruments, and then at any point in the game, you can have them bring out their banjo and kazoo, play a little song. I'm thinking of it kind of like the ocarina in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, where you unlock songs. Maybe you unlock them by collecting the music notes. Like, you can collect the music notes to create a new song. You bring the music notes to Mumbo, and he puts them together in a new magical song. And you can play it at any point in the world. Maybe it turns night to day in, like, any level. Maybe it lets you do Mumbo transformations from any point in the world. Just, like, little things here and there that can evolve the Banjo-Kazooie gameplay, rather than, like, just totally changing it up. Just doing something more with it. And, maybe you could frame the world themes around different genres of music. I had an idea of a Gruntilda final boss fight where she's like a real punk rock Gruntilda, and she's, like, playing guitar on her broomstick and casting musical spells at you. I haven't thought out the whole thing, just kind of like some basic music themed ideas here and there that I feel like could bring that theme more to the forefront rather than just being in the background. Because, like, up until now, Banjo-Kazooie, like, what theming do musical notes have? They're just an excuse to have something in the world for you to collect. I feel like you could have, at least for this game, I'm not saying you have to, like, totally rewrite Banjo-Kazooie's series identity to revolve around music and instruments. But, for this game, I feel like maybe music is the theme of it.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. When you said they were going to use their instruments, I just was picturing, like, Banjo smashing his banjo over the head of a baddie, like wrestler Jeff Jarrett.
Literally using them for just regular things you would do. Hey, you know what? I could stand on my banjo to reach the top shelf and get the mustard down.
That's a great use of a banjo, I have to say.
Yeah, it's thinking outside the box.
So I'm not a game designer.
Same. I don't want to pretend like I know what would make a great banjo.
But that's a better idea than I have, because for me, like, game design, that's not something I know retroactively what I like after I see a game like that. Just more of that. But, like, I for me, like, my skills, what I can bring is just, like, plot, lore, character, like world building, right? Like that's where I would come in. And so like the question of like, oh, is it more like Kazooie? Is it more like Tooie? Is it somewhere like halvesies in between? I honestly don't know. Like it would be a tightrope to walk, right? Like,
yeah.
It would have to be, and look, I can understand, I can understand why this is so hard, Dustin. Because reviving a long dormant series, it's not as easy as it sounds. I know it sounds easy. I know it sounds like anybody could do it. But
right.
I think we can look at relatively recent history for a good example of how just of a tightrope walk this is, because we can look at Battletoads 2020, a recent Rare revival. It was developed by Delilah Studios, but Rare actually, had oversight on it, had branding on it, branded as a co-Rare developed game. And it's a game I enjoyed, for the most part. I wish it had online multiplayer. That's my biggest criticism, that it came out like dead in the pandemic year, and it's a couch multiplayer game, and unless you have friends that you felt like you could get infected with, you just weren't gonna play it. And they didn't anticipate a worldwide pandemic when they said we're just gonna have couch multiplayer, but it just, that aspect of it fell really flat, because all of my friends are scattered around the world, and I would have really liked to play co-op with them, but alas, I can't. Like
it worked out perfectly for us Idaho boys being roommates. We were able to play 3-player co-op in that game.
Yeah. And like, I think the closest like DK Viner to me is Cameron, and it's still like 2.5 hours apart from us. So, and Battletoads isn't a game that a franchise that I really had die-hard feelings for. I have faint nostalgia for it. There's this funny Ninja Turtles ripoff that I remembered from before I became a Rare fan. And indeed, like Battletoads, to me, it always felt like this extremely removed thing from the Rare I knew and loved, from the Rare of Donkey Kong Country and Killer Instinct, even though the last Battletoads came out the same year those did. But it just felt like there's this gulf, this eternity between the two. Like they were almost just two separate eras between the last Battletoads and Donkey Kong Country. And Battletoads felt like early 1990s, that period of time that was still very much the late 1980s culturally. And Donkey Kong Country was the mid-90s through and through. Just had that attitude about it. And I like Battletoads 2020, for the most part, but a lot of people didn't. And, maybe it did lean a bit too hard into being more contemporary, like bringing in that Rick and Morty attitude to its sci-fi trappings. And, maybe they didn't bring enough of the original spirit into it. Like, I'm not a Rick and Morty guy, but I thought the humor in the game was fine. Like, I didn't see the problem with it. Like, maybe it's low-hanging fruit, so to speak, but the diaper gag made me laugh. Look, any character shits in a diaper. Any character shits in a diaper in front of me, and I'm gonna laugh.
I'm gonna clap my hands and feet together and laugh in joy.
I am a simpleton, and I like simple things.
Same.
But I've never gotten into Rick and Morty. I was made to watch a few episodes, and I was like, oh, it's like Futurama, but mean. And
what a way to sum it up. I like it, but I feel like over time I've gotten so just not into shows where just everybody hates each other and is just a mean jackass.
Yeah, that's why I really like the show Schitt's Creek, because it's so wholesome, and I need more wholesome things in my life. But I thought Battletoads 2020 was fine. Like, it didn't feel like just like oh, this is going to make you feel bad. Ha. But for battle,
if anything, it had wholesome gags. Remember when Rash wanted Pimple to punch him through the brain, and Pimple's like, I don't want to do that, but I will if you want it.
I really thought you were going to say, remember when Rash shit in the diaper?
Remember when Rash shit in that diaper? Yeah. That was pretty wholesome.
But for like the true Battletoads diehards, who I'm not included of, I'm a Donkey Kong Country generation kid, right? Like,
yeah, same.
I am the Rare era and later Rare fan. But for those who Battletoads was what it was all about, it seems to have mostly missed the mark for them. And that's not to speak against the quality of the game or what the Lala and Rare did with it. It just, a matter of fact, like, broad general consensus was that, didn't work for them. And, broad general consensus can be wrong. See Grab by the Ghoulies. For an example for that. But, I will fully admit, like, I am not part of that targeted crowd who it was maybe meant to appeal to. And so if it missed the mark for them, I'm not one to say, well, you're wrong. I enjoyed it for what it was, but I'm a weirdo. So, but just like Yooka-Laylee might have missed the mark for some Banjo-Kazooie fans, even though Yooka-Laylee, did a lot of things right, it still, like, didn't get that formula correct for a lot of people. And, like, Impossible Lair, thrilled, I think, most Donkey Kong Country fanatics. So, it just goes to show, like, how much of that tightrope I was talking about you have to walk, right? Like, how does a game like Impossible Lair work for fans of Donkey Kong Country? Well, a game like Yooka-Laylee doesn't work for fans of Banjo-Kazooie. And I mean, I like Yooka-Laylee, but I love Impossible Lair. Like, Impossible Lair is in my top 10 games list, Dustin.
Oh, I believe me, I saw.
Yeah. So just this helps perspective. Sometimes I trot out like, oh, Banjo-Kazooie is my third favorite game. Oh yeah, Yooka-Laylee in the Impossible Lair is tied for my sixth favorite game. People are like, well, what are your top 10 games, Hyle? So really quick, because I've already alluded to this several times in this episode. Number 10 is Star Fox Adventures. Don't laugh. Number 9 is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I'm not a nostalgia act. I like more recent games too.
Right.
8 is Donkey Kong Country 3. All these are DKU, by the way, because I
of course,
I am not a nostalgia act, but I am dedicated. 6 is aforementioned Tai, Yooka-Laylee Impossible Lair, and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, because I cannot decide between the two. For me, like, both are like the ultimate next evolution of the Donkey Kong Country formula, but each does their own thing and does a different thing than the other, and I can't really choose, right? Like, so I'm just like, okay, it's a tie.
I think I put Tropical Freeze over Yooka-Laylee in the Impossible Lair, but the fact that it's still so close for me says a lot about Impossible Lair.
Right.
Because Tropical Freeze is this massive, expensive game, and Impossible Lair is made by this much smaller team, and the fact that they're even able to come close to Tropical Freeze is very impressive.
Impossible Lair punches so far above its weight, it's astonishing. Number 5 for me is Diddy Kong Racing. A lot of people think that would be higher, but no, Diddy Kong Racing is 5. That's still pretty high. It's still pretty high.
You know what's funny about Diddy Kong Racing is, for the longest time, I was like, yeah, I really like Diddy Kong Racing, but I don't know if I'd consider it one of my top favorites. And I feel like it's only within the last couple of years that I was like, oh wait, no, yeah, I do. Yeah. It's definitely one of the best.
It's still, talk about games that still pack a punch, like, bring back Diddy Kong Racing and we'll just see how many Mario Kart fans are like, oh. Now, not everyone, but I think it would, turn some heads. Number 4 will get the most snickers from everyone. Grab by the Ghoulies is number 4 for me. Yeah, I said it. For me,
no laughing from me. It's up there for me as well.
For me, Grab by the Ghoulies, the Banjo team's follow up to Tooie. It's just such a perfect evolution of the 2D beat 'em up formula. Talking about Battletoads, right? For me, Grab by the Ghoulies was what made that format. Because I played a lot of those games when I was a kid, right? Like, cause Double Dragon, Battletoads, even things like the Ninja Turtle games, the Ninja Turtles, the arcade game in particular, which they ported over to the NES as Ninja Turtles 2. But
right.
That just played the hell out of that. And it's just repetitive. It's mindless. There's not any nuance to it, but you walk around, back alleys beating up ninjas and shit, and it was cool. But Grab by the Ghoulies took that formula and it was just like, let's make it a haunted house. Let's make 3D. Let's have every room have its own, like, way. It was an escape room game. Honestly, like, it was so.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
It's so cool, and it's got so much personality and world building, and it really felt like Greg Mayles and team really embracing the shared universe notion. After like maybe not being on board with it initially for Banjo, it's like, okay, let's have some fun with it. Let's bring in all these references. Let's just go crazy. Grab by the Ghoulies is fucking great. I realize it's not for everyone, but it's definitely, it's in my top 4 because it's so atypical and it's such a surprising game. I'm not great at it. I've tried to play it, on stream for our, Halloween, Screamaganza, and I was terrible at it. So I could stand to get better at it again, but I have a great time playing it. Anyway, 3 is Banjo-Kazooie, 2 is Sea of Thieves, and 1 is, of course, Donkey Kong Country 2. And I don't think I need to explain my rankings for any of those. But anyway,
right.
I say all that because Banjo-Kazooie, I hold that up so high. It's in my top 3 games to this day. All right, I love the hell out of Banjo-Kazooie. It means more to me than all Donkey Kong games but Donkey Kong Country 2.
Right.
So I understand that there is this complex chemistry that has to be concocted. And nobody really knows what the formula is to get it right. And something like Battletoads 2020 can try to make contemporary the formula of a beloved classic series, even bring in like hot writers from Rick and Morty and just have such a lukewarm reaction in the end of the day. So it's like a new Banjo-Kazooie game has this struggle of presumably not being made by the original devs because most of them are either platonic or they're at Rare, but clearly not going to be working on a new Banjo-Kazooie game unless someone like Greg Mayles comes in as the supervisor and saying, all right, like I will be the den mother, right, to all of you, but it's your game. I'm just here to lend ideas or say, I wouldn't do that. Maybe you do that. He'd be the Miyamoto coming in and say, let's have Banjo blow on things.
Yeah, it'll be great and everyone will love it.
Oh, but Banjo will burn his little feetsies. What if he puts honeycombs on his feet?
Yeah, let's give him jiggy shoes.
So there's that challenge. Just the psychological thing of this is not being made by the original devs. So how do we avoid it coming across as an imitator in Banjo-Kazooie's clothes? You've got to juggle what people love about Banjo-Kazooie and what people love about Banjo-Tooie without pissing off the absolutists on either side. Those who want the evolution of Banjo-Tooie or to harken back to the more simple structure of Banjo-Kazooie. But then, Dustin, you've also got to keep the peace with the nuts and bolts debate while also trying to avoid direct comparisons to Yooka-Laylee. It's tough. It's tough.
It is very tough. And you know what makes it tougher is nowadays I see a lot of people really not liking Banjo-Tooie. I see lots of people online just saying like, oh yeah, Banjo-Tooie, what were they thinking with that one? So even just one game onward, you have people who like already know what they want out of a Banjo game and are not satisfied with what came after. So I feel like it would be super hard to make a game that pleases everybody.
It's hard, yeah. You've also, like we mentioned with the Battletoads 2020 struggle, you've got to be fresh and contemporary, but also have it serve as a delectable throwback. Like, oh, finally, they're making a game like this again. not an easy balance there. I mean, I remember when Donkey Kong Country Returns came out, a lot of people in our community, like we were mostly enthusiastic and supportive, but a lot of people in our community were like, don't like that. They changed that. Nope, not for me. Hate it. Hate it. Hate it. And of course, that mellows out over time, and Tropical Freeze comes out, and maybe that's more warmly received, ironically, but it's hard. It's a tough balance, and you've got to satisfy fans of the original and make all new fans. And
definitely,
I think that last point is easier, considering we established in this episode how Banjo-Kazooie, that original game at the very least, can have cross-generational appeal. So it's not just like it's some artifact that hit really hard in 1998 but has no relevance today. If people do give Banjo-Kazooie a chance, more often than not, they will like it because it still holds up and it still has something unique to say in the overcrowded video game landscape.
Definitely.
But when you factor all of that in, like, I can understand, Dustin, why Rare and why Xbox Studios have been so cautious in greenlighting one.
It's a very tall order to fill.
Yeah.
And like, I love Banjo-Kazooie so much, sometimes I wonder if even I would be satisfied. Like, I like to think that it's been so long, I'll take whatever Banjo they want to hand my way. I'm like, as long as I get something. But, like, I think about, like, all the TV shows that are coming out today and how they're reviving so many shows. And a lot of shows are given a new lease on life. And I could count on, like, one hand how many revivals I think, like, I not only enjoy, but are, like, to the same quality as their original run. And sometimes I just think, maybe I'm just too big a fan. Maybe I just would not be pleased with this no matter how it came out. Like, there would just be something to rub me the wrong way. And I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of more like that with Donkey Kong than I am with Banjo-Kazooie. Kind of because I feel like with Donkey Kong, they could take it in so many directions, and they have. Like, we've gotten Jungle Beat, which we know now was not meant to replace what Donkey Kong Country was. But I'm here in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, what if that new EPD, and I don't actually think this is how it's going to go down, but I'm sitting here thinking, what if that new Donkey Kong game, whenever it comes out, is another Jungle Beat situation? What if they're like, we are changing exactly what Donkey Kong is, fuck whatever rules you think you had about Donkey Kong, we're doing it our way. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, I know I gotta be flexible on it, but I'm sure there will be some stuff I will be unsatisfied with. But with Banjo-Kazooie, I don't know. Part of me thinks, like, it's such a specific thing that I feel like I wouldn't really have to worry about it. Like, I kind of feel like I can be more flexible with it because the DNA of what Banjo-Kazooie is just less flexible. Like, it just seems like it would be obvious what and what not to do with a new Banjo game.
Yeah.
Like, even Nuts and Bolts has, like, it still feels like it's in the Banjo world, even if the gameplay is totally different. Like, they knew what about the characters worked, what about just the general feeling of it worked. And I feel like that's something that would carry over even if new developers did take it over. I'm not saying it's guaranteed to be the same, but I would be less worried about another studio tackling Banjo, I guess. It just seems obvious what works.
Well, yeah, and like, I think my biggest concern, and this isn't really much of concern because I feel like if anybody were to approach Banjo, this is the first thing they would realize. I don't want any reboots, right? Like, I don't want them to say, like, the old games didn't happen. This is a new continuity.
Exact. I would hate that. I would hate that so much. We were talking about this the other day. I was talking about it with some other people in our community, and I feel like that's okay for something like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which you know, it has multiple continuities, multiple different series, and that works for something like it when each series can have like dozens upon dozens of episodes to establish itself. Not so much when you're a series that has like 5 games.
Well, and so much of the appeal of Banjo-Kazooie, especially the subsequent sequels and prequels or midquels that turn into prequels and then become midquels at the end again. So much of the appeal is seeing the way characters evolve and the world grows and relationships form. And it's just like, I love, for example, Banjo-Tooie. Banjo and Kazooie meet Jolly Roger.
Right.
And then Jolly Roger just becomes their friend. And just, oh yeah, no, I'm gonna race planes with you. And just, I'm gonna paint your house pink. Cause, you need a makeover. And I don't know, just little stuff like that, little connections that grow and evolve. It feels like a living, breathing world. And that's what I always like about Rare's Donkey Kong, but I think Banjo really embraced that in a way Donkey Kong never can. And I say that knowing that they fucking killed off Donkey Kong's mom just for the lulz. But, you know, like, it's that level of, like, continuity chaos that Banjo-Kazooie embraces that I feel like if you are approaching Banjo-Kazooie, we have been entrusted with Banjo-Kazooie. That's the first thing you gotta realize is fans of Banjo-Kazooie are very protective of the history, the continuity, the lore, if you will. And the characters and the way they relate to each other, that you cannot flush any of that down the toilet, even if it is the toilet from Banjo-Kazooie. Because, like, even if people didn't like nuts and bolts, even if it was really contentious back, you know, in the early 2010s, you still want that to happen. You still want that to have a place in history. We want to, like, just use that as a springboard. Where does the story go next?
Exactly. Like, I don't want to get a new Banjo game and have it be like, okay, well, nuts and bolts didn't happen. Instead, this happened. I don't want a Banjo-Kazooie split timeline.
No. Unless, you know, you have fun with the concept of a split timeline within the story itself. Like, continue that, like, snowball banjo, like, just runaway plot. Like, okay, well, we introduced time travel in Grunny's Revenge. Now let's introduce splitting the timeline and you know, the multiverse. And, like, maybe that's a little bit too chaotic for your Big Banjo revival. Maybe you want to take it back to basics a little bit, like a Donkey Kong Country Returns, where, okay, the plot is going to be Donkey Kong loses his bananas, right?
Right.
Maybe the plot is, oh, 2D's been abducted again, and it's a soft reboot of the first game. But it still acknowledges the whole total history of Banjo-Kazooie. And then from there, you can evolve the plot and the where it goes. But, you know, we know people have made pitches to do a new Banjo-Kazooie game. Multiple people, studios have made pitches to do a Banjo-Kazooie game. There have even been rumors, as I mentioned, for the last year that one might actually be in the works. We don't know if that's true or not. I'm not putting any weight behind it. I hold out hope just like you, though.
Yeah.
But the way I see it is, Dustin, you've got one shot per generation of getting it right. One shot.
Yeah.
And you can't blow it, or else the property will become dormant again. It'll be back on the shelf. And then you won't even have that hype that we want a new Banjo. We want a new Banjo. Then it just becomes, oh, we had a new Banjo. Oh. And then
we had a new Banjo and we didn't like it.
And then interest plummets and people stop buying the merchandise. And you got a turkey on your hands, Dustin. So there's a lot of pressure riding on a new Banjo-Kazooie game. So I understand why it's so dicey And I say that knowing that the dice were baddies in Donkey Kong 64. Just a lot of stupid decisions in that game. They didn't even name them. I think we named them Dicers.
Great name.
Yeah, not as good as the name of the killer dominoes from the same world, which we named, of course, Dominono.
Oh, I get it, because they're dominoes, but they're like bad.
Yeah, no. They're no-nos.
You know what? I like that better than Dicer. Dicer's awful. It's like, because they're dice.
I think Matt might have named Dicer, but he gave us Rodney the Hare, so go easy on Matt.
Yeah, it balances out.
I came up with Dominono, so...
You can take credit for that winner.
That's your Emmy-winning writing right there. But, I mean, Sea of Thieves is Rare's most successful IP. By and large, like, by the numbers, but by the, like, what it's generated in revenue, it is their most successful IP. However, I would say GoldenEye is probably their most lauded game historically, like, critically revered. I would say Donkey Kong Country is probably the franchise that has the greatest cultural footprint at this point, as far as what it's gone on to inspire to this day. But Banjo-Kazooie is the series that Rare is probably most associated with, broadly speaking.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
I would say Banjo-Kazooie is the thing for Rare that's closest to what Nintendo has with Super Mario or Sega has with Sonic.
A mascot for the company, basically.
More or less. I mean, that might be a little bit reductive, but when you think of Rare and you think of, like, what comes to mind? Like, if you're not just, like, going down the list I just said, like, what comes to mind when you think of Nintendo? Like, hey, it's a me! What do you think of when you think of Sega? And then Sonic says, like...
do a Sonic impression.
Hey guys! Is that anything close?
Sonic's classic catchphrase. Hey guys!
I don't know, I tried. I put myself...
I know, I love it.
I put myself out on a limb, but as we already established, you fall off the limb, and then you have to go back up the tree all over again.
I gotta be totally honest with you, Hyle. Yeah. I wanted to see you fall off that tree. That's why I encouraged
I know,
it.
You got giddy there. You got, I'm sorry, Josh, if you're listening.
Yeah, I clap my hands seeing poor Hyle fall down and break his arm out of that tree.
But you think of Rare, and if you let your mind drift, then you hear, guh, and bree. So.
Yeah.
I understand the crushing weight of getting Banjo-Kazooie right. And even I completely understand, like, why when Craig Duncan took over Rare, and Rare has just had middling title after middling title, not in quality, but in sales and impact on the Xbox brand since 2003, with the minor exception of Viva Pinata and Kinect Sports, which did good numbers. I can understand why Craig was like, we've got to reframe what people think of when they think of Rare, because this holding pattern the studio's been in since the buyout isn't working. Like, the studio's on death's door. We need to get away from this perception that people have of, remember Rare on Nintendo from the 90s? Like, it wasn't working for them anymore. And so they went back to the drawing board and, like, can we make a Rare game that's contemporary, that's more of a clean break, but still honors and acknowledges what Rare has been about historically. And it came up with Sea of Thieves, and lo and behold, it brought them fame and fortune yet again. But, I think then if you say, like, okay, well, it's time to revive Banjo-Kazooie because the people want it, there's pent-up demands, Smash Brothers has made them relevant again. There is that weight of, well, it also has to be done right. Even if Rare is not doing it, it's still so heavily associated with the Rare brand and always will be, that
Yeah.
you can't get it wrong. And so if a studio comes to them and say, yeah, we have a great idea for a Banjo-Kazooie game. Banjo is a baby. It's like Muppet Babies. Then Craig Duncan or whoever at Rare would be like, no, like,
no, thank you.
It's
we'll
not,
call you.
You know, not out of malice, you know, it's just like, one, we can't set Rare back, and two, like, if we do Banjo-Kazooie poorly, it's gonna reflect poorly on Rare, just like, you know, Young Conquer, I'm not shit-talking Young Conquer here, but Young Conquer had a disastrous rollout when they showed it off.
Yeah.
And Rare wasn't in a loop for that. And they knew, like, okay, even if another studio is handling one of our properties, it's going to reflect poorly on us and we have to answer for it. And so that really, like, made them all the more stringent, like, when it comes to this kind of stuff. So I understand why it's taken so long, because it has to be the best pitch ever that hits all of that criteria we mentioned. And, you know, when you look at Banjo-Kazooie's history, like, was it ever supposed to be more than 2 games? Because Greg Mayles, he moves on after 2 games. Like, Donkey Kong was a different scenario, because so long as they were partnered with Nintendo, the expectation was they were going to make Donkey Kong games. So they were always going to scrounge up a team for Donkey Kong. There was always going to be people on the bench waiting to get called up to do Donkey Kong. But Banjo, which was more of an, you know, the project that Dream evolved into, you know, they were, of course, they were hoping it was going to be a huge success and win fans, but then if they also have to keep that franchise spinning, then all of a sudden, like, well, Greg Mayles wants to move on to the next thing. Like, who's going to make the new Banjo game? Even at Rare, even in this alternate timeline where they stayed with Nintendo, the question is, who would be making the next Banjo game for the GameCube or whatever?
Right.
So, I don't know. This isn't a fun discussion for anybody to have behind the scenes at Xbox Studios. I can't imagine the flop sweat it would generate.
Flop sweat's a good word.
Thank you, yeah. But I'm sure my perspective will probably have shifted yet again when we talk about the next Banjo-Kazooie game 5 years from now on the 30th anniversary episode for Banjo-Kazooie. I can't wait. Dustin, do you know what happened 30 years before Banjo-Kazooie? The goddamn Vietnam War!
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.